The committee whole is back from recess. We're just going to take another short 1-minute recess so we can get all the senators in. We're going to start off the first round with Mr. Miguel Badallo from Guam Waterworks, who's going to give us a presentation, and then we're going to hear from the administration with former Senator Clint Rigel. So if we can get all the senators in, we'll take a short recess. The committee of the whole is back from a short recess. We're going to start off first with Miguel Badallo from GWA, and then after he's done, I'm going to allow the one round of questions for him. So please, Miguel, state your name for the record, and you can begin with your update.
Miguel Badallo, General Manager of Guam Waterworks Authority. So just to give you an update on the water system, GWA's northern water system is operating, but at reduced capacity. we have about, the number bounces, but between 48 and 50% of all of our wells operable, either on generator power or on island power. Crews are working to restore remaining 30% of our wells which need repairs or power restoration, and 14% of our wells require motor replacements. %48 of our wells are operating either generator power or online. About 30% need either generator repairs or other minor repairs, and 14% of our wells require motor replacement. So that these are where we pull the entire pump column out of the well and then replace the pump and motor and send it back down.
I'm sorry, Mr. Berdalio, can you clarify, when you say 48% of your wells are
Operating?
okay, does that mean that they're bringing water out
Yes.
to the people?
Yes.
Okay, just checking. Thank you.
So we do, if the senators may be aware that the majority of our water production comes from the northern water wells and flows through a series of pipes and reservoirs and stations down towards the central and south. We are currently only operating half of our wells, so obviously our production is limited. There is water in the system, but it is not sufficient to meet demand and fill the reservoirs, so we don't have sufficient pressure in many areas. Even though there are water in the pipes, it can't get out of the pipes to the customers because of this pressure issue. So that's the northern system. And the central system, our own sources are augmented by the Navy, and we do have water coming from the FEMA water treatment plant in a couple different locations. They restored our connection in Santa Rita, so we were able to restore most of Santa Rita except for the higher elevations, and we're restoring agate. That work is still ongoing. Nimitz Hill area also receives water from the Navy. We have restored most of that, but the higher elevations that require small booster pump stations that currently do not have generators are still without water. On our southern water system, we supply with the UGAM surface water treatment plant, which is operating at reduced capacity due to damage to control equipment sustained in the storm. So we have, since yesterday, restored most of the south, including Mauricio, but we are now working towards restoring Umatic, which still has some water in their reservoirs from before the storm. The current weather has caused some flash floods in the UGAM watershed, so we did have to shut down the plant earlier today. It will operate intermittently, but only come back on after the turbidity in the river has subsided. We have deployed about 9 flex tankers, and we have 2 of our own tankers that are servicing the hospital and clinics and other critical care facilities and refilling them. FEMA provided 2 additional tankers yesterday, which we are getting into shape so that we can use and deploy them. I think one of them is already out up in Gigo. As the tankers in the villages are depleted, we will refill them, assess if they're still needed in those areas, or if water has been restored, we will deploy them to other areas that still have no water. That essentially is a summary of our water system. On the wastewater side, we have several plants that are operational. Northern District Wastewater Treatment Plant, Umatic, Mauricio, Hagatnya, and Inarohan plants are all functioning normally, although some with reduced capacity. The Agate Santa Rita plant is processing flow, but it is still without power. So we are limited in the treatment that is being provided at the Agate Santa Rita plant. Pump stations that bring the wastewater to these plants in some areas still do not have power, and though in those areas we do have some sewer overflows that are occurring. We have cautioned the public to avoid contact with any overflowing sewage, and we are doing our best to try and get those stations back online. We are prioritizing with GPA getting island power back to several of our high producing wells in Gigo, Also along the Finnegaudzen area in Route 3, the F-series wells and D-series wells. There are several which remain down, and we're hopeful that once those circuits are reestablished and the wells are back on island power, we'll be able to increase our production and get more water in the reservoirs. So that's about it for the summary of our water and wastewater systems.
Thank you, Mr. Badallo. We're going to go ahead and start with the Oversight Chair of Water to start off with the questioning. I think that's Senator Paris. We're going to start off with you. Do you have any questions? We're going to just do one round, everyone.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you, General Manager, for being down here. I know you have a busy schedule. I know in one of our earlier interactions, you did a tour with me in regards to the different, facilities. And one of the things I recall that you mentioned was that there are going to be generators for the water wells. And I guess we had Mayor Alec here this morning basically stating that, they were in a meeting with the governor, and, it seemed like GWA was ready for the storm, and then only to find out that there was, basically a shortage of I guess, generators that were in operation. If maybe you can clarify, when you made that statement that you were ready, were all the checks done at the different water wells? And at what point did you realize that these generators were not functioning, or if they were present to begin with?
So for all of the wells that we do have generators for, we were ready. And the decision to start those generators prior to the storm, before the storm approached, that's a call that's made by Guam Power Authority. They operate and maintain the generators. And so when Mr. Beneventi decides to take us off of the grid and put us on generator power, that decision is made by him, but in consultation with our control center, and our people are advised. So prior to the storm, all the sites that did have generators were operating. Sorry, let me rephrase. All the sites that did have operating generators were started, and those remained online during the storm. After the storm, or during the storm, some of those generators may have gone down for whatever reason, overheating. We had several units that had water from the wind-driven rain, had pushed water into the control panels and shorted them out, and so they went offline during the storm, and it wasn't until during the assessment process that we identified those and have been working with GPA to get those back online.
So my understanding is that not all wells had generators to them. Is that correct?
That's correct. Not all the wells have generators.
Okay, so why was that decision, at what point was that decision made that not all wells would have generators?
So I don't know if there was a decision that was made for the wells not to have generators. There was a decision made as we progress in renovating the wells and doing capital improvement projects, if they don't have generators, to install them. And GPA has a similar capital improvement program. Where they were with respect to their progress on that capital improvement program, I cannot say, but with our CIPs, when we rehabilitate a well site, that is included in the construction plans. And as we rehabilitate, we do include either replacing an existing generator or adding a generator if there is not one.
Okay, so it was basically based on the capital improvement project plans you had in place, and not an overall assurance that the wells would have generators. Is that correct?
Well, I think it's the board's policy that they all have generators, but the execution of that takes the form of our capital improvement program and GPA's capital improvement program.
Okay, so I understand that you have a CCU meeting today.
We do.
With resolutions. Can you explain, are those resolutions going to address or expedite the restoration of water to the island?
These resolutions were planned prior to the storm. They are for the regular business of the board and involve mostly regulatory compliance, capital improvement projects, and other issues.
Okay, are there anything that's in plan for the meeting in regards to restoration, or at least prioritizing the restoration of the wells? Because according to what you just said earlier, 30% need some sort of repair.
None of those repairs require action by the board. Those are things that we are working on at the operational level.
Okay. And what do you need to get this expedited, to get the wells up and running? Have you been in communication with FEMA in regards to your needs to get this water restored to the public?
We have submitted a request to FEMA for generators for our critical high-producing wells. They have responded. We have 2 being delivered at this time. As soon as they are delivered and hooked up, we will start producing water from those wells. One of them is one of our higher producers up in Jigo, and the other one is in the Agana Springs area. They've also are continuing to conduct assessments for an additional 8 sites, I believe. There was a total of 10. So those are water booster pump stations for some of these higher elevations that currently can have water but don't have power to the booster pump stations.
Senator Paris, can I just have, Lester would like to make a comment. Go ahead, Lester.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Fenton is here. I think Mr. Fenton can confirm the statements by Mr. Bordalio that after the announcement of Condition 4 and then an assessment of the capabilities of the operational abilities of the generators, there were pre-positioned generators on island that were immediately requested for use for water restoration. And if I could ask Mr. Fenton to elaborate.
Thank you, Lester. Senator Paris, I'm going to have you go ahead and continue your line of questioning, but I will allow you to ask the FEMA representative, Mr. Fenton or Bob, to ask any questions as well, even though you're talking to Miguel. So I'm going to allow the senators to ask questions on both sides at this time. So feel free to ask Mr. Fenton
Yeah, I would
anything.
like to continue the questioning.
Then please go ahead. You have the floor.
Okay. All right. So can you confirm, so how many wells were actually operating before Typhoon hit, GM?
The number fluctuates based on operating conditions, but it's typically around 90 or so wells.
90 wells, so that would be what percentage? Out of 115?
About 75%.
75, okay. And after the typhoon, it dropped down to?
We're operating at right now 48%.
Okay. And so what kind of supplies do you need to bring it back up to the baseline? I mean, right now you said you're only going to get 2 generators. That's probably not enough because that's only 2 more wells.
Some of these don't need to be replaced, so I don't need a new generator, but some of them do need either repair. What I've seen based on the assessment reports include leaking radiators, low oil pressure, which we need some diagnostics before we can figure out what needs to be replaced. So I can't give you an answer to that question because supplies or parts are not necessarily known at this time.
Okay, because that's really critical. If we want to get the restoration expedited, there has to be an assessment of exactly what the needs are. So how soon can the assessment be
It's
done?
ongoing.
Okay. Yeah, you know, as soon as we can get that, we can get the water back, hopefully, as soon as possible. So do you have a list of your needs? I mean, of course, that's going to come from assessment, but FEMA's here so they can, you know, hopefully, you know, expedite the provision of supplies to get these wells up to 90%, 90 wells, sorry. 90 wells were operating before the typhoon. And if we want to get the island back, water back, you know, if there's a way you can expedite that assessment so the materials can be replenished.
Understood. We're working on it. And as our needs are identified, we're immediately reaching out through the process that's established up at EOC, through all the partner agencies for whatever assistance we might need or what they might be able to offer. So we are doing that.
Okay. And then as far as the sewage system, so that's really critical because now we're getting backflows. So what was the baseline as far as booster pumps? Of course, the Santa Rita sewage plant is a big, you know, is a big part of you know, clean water, right? Making sure the water that is being returned is
Yeah.
clean.
We're not bypassing any treatment plants. So all the flows that are getting to the treatment plants are flowing through the plants. So we're not bypassing any plants. In some cases, as in Agate Santa Rita, we're getting reduced treatment, but we still have a clear effluent, and that is coming out of the plant. So we are providing treatment. It's
Has an assessment been done as far as what's needed to ensure that it's back 100% operational, or at least operational to baseline?
So the only station that is not operational to baseline would be Agate Santa Rita, and once power is restored, then we will be there.
Are there any incidental or, you know, results or, you know, consequences of it not being put back online right away?
I'm not sure that I understand the question, but in terms of the impacts,
Yes.
well, we are discharging the effluent, which normally would be pumped out to the shared ocean outfall with the Navy. That is being, at this time, pumped into, with smaller pumps, pumped into our on-site ponding basin.
Okay, so again, you know, the assessment needs to be done. Are you confident you can get that done?
We know what we
quickly?
need. We know what we need at Agate Santa Rita, and we're trying to procure it right now.
Okay. Is that through the, through
There's-
FEMA?
Well, we're using our own means. There's nothing available on island for the part, so we're looking at trying to source it from Hawaii and have it flown over.
Okay. The UGAM watershed. So I saw something in social media that you were doing preparatory work to make sure that, I guess, there was no erosion. I think that the issue there is the siltation, right? So what is being done currently to bring that back up?
So whenever there is a storm, I want to make sure we're clear. Whenever there's a storm and the turbidity in the river increases, there's a set point at above which we cannot pump the water through the membrane plant. And the turbidity levels in the river are entirely dependent on the rainfall and the flash floods. During light rainfall, the water's clear enough for us to use it, but during heavy rainfall, when it gets very chocolatey brown, we terminate operations at the plant. But we do have the reservoir of finished water, which is what we use to sustain supply while the plant is intermittently offline. The only way to resolve the issue of the turbidity in the river is to have a separate source of raw water that is pumped out of the river and in a reservoir, and then when the river gets too murky to use, then we can draw from the reservoir. That is a project that's currently undergoing study. We recently got a grant from the Bureau of Reclamation to conduct a watershed study to determine what type of improvements would be needed in order to provide us that resiliency. And last month, the team from Bureau of Reclamation was out here, but that's still in the early planning stages. The only thing we can do at this point is, as part of our normal operations, is to clear the intake, remove whatever silt we can from the wet well, and that is just part of our normal operation. So we're doing everything that we possibly can at this point. The only thing that could allow that situation to be better is a large-scale improvement project that provides a dam and a raw water reservoir, which we are working towards with this study with Bureau of Reclamation.
Okay, a question regards to communities that rely on military water. Are there any areas around Guam that rely heavily on FENA?
The Agate Santa Rita area does rely on a connection from the FENA water treatment plant.
How about Mamung Totomaiti? Do they still get water from there?
I believe there's a connection in place, but we typically are serving that from our own sources at this time.
And what are the issues to help relieve access to water for those areas, or has water been restored?
Water has been restored. In fact, the military has increased the flows above what they normally provide to assist us with recovery.
Okay.
Ma-
So
Senator,
questions?
yeah.
This is just for GWA, not for,
Yeah, just for GWA
Okay.
right now.
All
Okay,
right,
if you don't
right.
mind. And I'd like to ask your vice chair under Guam Water Works, which is Senator Fisher, if he has any questions.
How about now? Okay, good to go. Good afternoon, sir. Later on today, we are going to be asked whether or not we want to give the governor $50 million in initial transfer authority. Have you had any discussions about finances and what she needs money-wise to help your agency?
No,
Yeah, because maybe somebody else knows, but I don't know why she says 50 million and not 49 or 320. I just don't know what she's using the money for, or what she plans on using the money for. And thank you very much for your candor. By the way, does GWA still recommend that where water is free-flowing to the community, that we still boil the water?
we have a precautionary boil water. We issued a precautionary boil water notice.
Okay.
We have conducted 2 rounds of sampling of water in the distribution system from all the places that we normally take our regular weekly samples. And those results have come back negative for bacteria and coliform, so the water is as safe as it can be. So there is no data to support a mandatory boil water notice, but we still put out the precautionary boil water notice.
Okay, is that true for the entire island?
Yes?
Okay,
Sorry, let me take that back. That's true for all of GWA's systems. I can only speak for our systems.
Okay, because a follow-up question is this. Rick Cruz from the Pacific Daily News, he published some news photographs this morning of the Gilbaza Dollar Housing subdivision, and it looks like they underwent an absolute catastrophe up there, even more so than the rest of the island. Do you have any idea what the status of water delivery is to these marginalized communities, such as Dollar Housing and Gilbaza?
So specifically for the Gilbaza subdivision that you're talking about, we do have a capital improvement project that is being funded by US EPA to replace or provide water and sewer infrastructure for that subdivision.
Is that going forward?
It's in the design stages.
Okay, it's in the design stage. What about today? The people at Gilbaza, the people at Dollar Housing, other areas that are not historically well served, do they have fresh water?
For those specific areas, I can't say right now. I don't have a status broken down by housing subdivision.
Okay, hang on just a minute. Okay, thank you. Okay, so
But
we'll,
in general terms, the only subdivision of that type that as I understand your question, that
Yeah.
does not have water piped to each account or each lot is Gilbaza. The other Zero Down and Gil Breeze all have, they do have water distribution, and they also have, I believe, Zero Down, I know for sure, has wastewater.
do you know what the population is of Gilbaza?
No, I'm sorry, sir, I don't.
Is the answer to whether or not Gilbaza, and I know you haven't done a neighborhood breakdown, is it safe to assume those people don't have fresh water?
I don't want to make an assumption, sir, about whether they do or whether they don't. In general, from where I understand our service to be active, we are, like I said, we are still not producing sufficient water to meet the demand in all areas. And all those areas up north are only, especially the ones that are dependent on the pressure of an operating well to provide them water. If the reservoirs are empty, it is likely that they do not have water service. There's not sufficient pressure.
Is the issue of insufficient pressure, did that exist even before the typhoon?
Absolutely.
What- What's the problem? They're ratepayers too.
No. It's not an ongoing problem. When everything's operating, it doesn't, there is no issue with pressure. My point is that in some areas, because of the way Guam's water system was originally constructed, we don't operate by pumping water out of a well, transmitting it through a dedicated transmission line to the reservoir, and then having it gravity flow feed back into the system. In those instances, communities are reliant on the pressure from the reservoir and not from the well. The situation I was describing is if you're in a neighborhood that relies on a connection that's right next to the well and the well provides the pressure, you only get pressure when the well operates.
That's understood, but I guess my earlier question was, prior to this typhoon coming through, that area had
Yes.
ongoing water problems?
Yes. No ongoing water problems. They had water service, which was sufficient.
Okay. All right, sir. I guess the other thing, frustration on island is growing, and when that event happens, unfortunate things come about. Are your pump stations, in particular the generators, are they secure? In other words, they're not going to walk away, are they?
No, most of our pump stations that have permanent installations, including permanent fuel storage tank and all of that, those are not going to walk away. With the FEMA ones that we may be supplied, that has become a concern for us today. There are several, as I mentioned, there was 10 on the list. Several of those are for smaller pump stations that are located in an easement. There's no generator structure there right now, so no permanent housing for it. We're worried, those are placed next to the site. They're wired up, they will operate, but we're worried that those smaller ones might walk away, and so we're looking at temporary guard services if needed to make sure that those don't walk away.
Okay, and then just a final question. This is a follow-up to what was also in the newspaper today. People don't know yet, but there might be an estimate that maybe there might be 1,000 people who are, or more, who are now homeless on Guam. Does your agency have a sense? I mean, you guys have been out all over the island. I'm just asking to speculate. Do you have a sense of how bad it's going to be as this weather clears up and we try to get the system going?
I would say that we have a general sense from a management level. I don't think that we yet have a sense or a mechanism established from a customer service level to try and assist with that, but that doesn't mean we won't. It just means we haven't yet.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. Senator Lujan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. General Manager, for being here this afternoon. Earlier, your colleague had asked whether or not you've been in consultation with the administration in regards to the funding that you would need for repairs and or, I guess, restoration. That not happening at this point, what is your financial need at this point for your restoration?
I don't believe that we've established a financial need for the restoration. GWA does not typically receive any funds from the general government. We operate purely on our rates. I can say that for the last 4 years of our 5-year rate plan, the rate relief that we have requested from the PUC has not been granted. And as a result of that, and also as of the economic downturn from the pandemic, GWA since 2020 has been in severe austerity measures. And so we have going into this typhoon, we had a lot of deferred maintenance. And so we are still under those conditions. But we are utilizing our own resources in terms of the response. So I don't have I've not submitted or made any statement of financial need for response, for recovery.
Okay, that being said, maybe I can refer back to the FEMA gentleman here in regards to monies that will come to you for whatever rehab or restoration efforts. And because some of these, as you said, as a result from deferred maintenance. So if monies were given to GWA for, again, to fix whatever needs to be fixed, and they were found to been as a maybe previous problem from deferred maintenance, would those monies be reimbursable?
Yeah, so first, Bob Fenton here from FEMA. I'm the regional administrator for FEMA Region 9. Have the Western United States all the way out to Guam. Staff Act funding is cost shared 75-25, so 25% is the responsibility of the state or local government. It's a little complex when you ask about deferred maintenance. It would depend what we're talking about. If it was still in operation, I don't think we could see a maintenance plan against it, it wouldn't be an issue. So I'd have to understand exactly when you talk about deferred maintenance, what's the deferred maintenance? The Congress recently in the event in Maria in Puerto Rico went ahead and waived.
Can you bring that mic a little closer? Thank you, thank you.
Recently in the event in Hurricane Maria, Congress waived the requirement, the issue of deferred maintenance for their reimbursement. We do understand that historically on islands, sometimes because of the corrosive nature of salt and other things, there's limitations to what can be done. But I'd have to understand specifically what we're talking about to give you a good answer.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, I just want to make sure because, again, Mr. Berdalio had mentioned again that they normally don't deal with this. It's based on their rates, their payments. And go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. So why I said 25% reimbursement for damaged infrastructure. That's, we reimburse publicly owned damaged infrastructure at a rate of 75% federal, 25% state or local match. So that would be his responsibility, Guam Water Authority's responsibility. I think the part that would probably not go to him, that would go to the government of Guam, is any mission assignments I'm getting to direct the federal government. One of my roles is to coordinate the federal government's response to this event. And those mission assignments come in from the government of Guam. So direct me to put a generator at one of his wells. I'm getting direction from the state coordinating officer, the territory coordinating officer for the governor to do that. My authority allows me then to task the Corps of Engineers to go install generators we have here. The cost of doing that is also 75-25 cost share, and those costs would most likely be bared by the government of Guam versus Guam Water Authority, because that's who's the authorized tasker, is the government of Guam.
Okay. 75-25, 25 being, I guess, Gov Guam?
Gov Guam
Yeah.
or the
Sure.
specific entity
Sure.
that
Do
is getting
you
reimbursed.
know? Do you know whether we got? Because I know the congressman had written asking for a waiver on the 25%. Do you know whether that was granted or not?
Yeah, no waivers yet. Typically, we would look at the amount of spend happening. There is in our regulations, when you get to $104 per capita, I think it is, maybe 106, it's right around there. There is the ability to put a request in to go to 90-10.
90-10?
90-10, there's that request that could go in. And then underneath, because you're a territory and there's some specific rules there, that you can go and ask for a 100% waiver. That's not granted unless usually there's catastrophic events that kind of like 9/11, COVID was one that was granted for a little while. Maria was one. Pangsanwa, it was granted on the beginning for A and B, so there is the potential that maybe what they may do is they may select a portion of the costs and do that on, but that's a presidential decision, it's not my decision.
In your experience, be it 90-10 or 100% at this point, and what you have seen, I guess in the island, where do you think we would fall on the?
Well, this is a pretty significant event. I've been coming to disasters in Guam since Typhoon Mawar. I spent Pangsanwa on Guam and went through the typhoon with everyone. I would say that's the closest event to this, being that level and that catastrophic. And in that event, eventually the cost share got modified to 100% for debris removal and emergency protective measures for a period, and then 90-10 after that.
Mm-hmm. What is the time frame for finding out waivers
Probably
granted?
going to be months away.
Months away?
Yeah, it could be months. I mean, usually what we want to start to get as a scope of what the impact is. Our program is typically a reimbursement program, not funding up front. That what we will do is provide direct assistance up front, which we're doing right now by putting the generators in the wells, having DOD doing some route clearance, providing water and food to the shelters. So those things are all direct federal assistance. I'm tasking the federal government to go do it. I'm keeping a tab of those costs and letting Guam know what they are. And every time they request, I give an estimate of what those costs may be, and then they sign off on it, and then I task another federal agency. I've probably had 15 flights over here already, C-17s, chartered flights.
I saw them all flying over my house this morning.
Antonov that I'm bringing over here with stuff. Just got requests from Guam Power Authority to bring some big bucket trucks to reach the high wires. So we're everything, we're all in. Federal government, DOD, Corps of Engineers, every federal agency's here, and we're being as responsive as we can.
Senator, you made a statement earlier about the stockpile. Could you ask Mr. Fenton to confirm the numbers that you cited earlier?
Yeah, actually, that was cited to us from the congressman's office.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
the question about...
They, supposedly, as a congressman was working, I guess, with the FEMA folks out here, that there was 1.1 million units of water and 909,000 MREs in a FEMA warehouse here in Guam.
Yeah, so we do have a warehouse here in Guam. We do stage water, MREs, cots, tents, plastic sheeting, generators, a number of other items. And primarily that warehouse is for Guam and CNMI events, so that we have something here on island. And we've gone ahead and started moving water and food out of those locations to the four shelters, and then also we also have some Red Cross items in there, moved the Red Cross items out, and we moved pallets of water to every mayor in the last couple of days.
Okay. Yeah, because one of the concerns the mayors, the mayors represented by Mayor Alec this morning was saying that they don't have the staff to be able to go and pick those things up, and they would need to be...
Well, I dropped it at their location, at their office, so...
You're dropping it there, at their location?
I went to a meeting, the first meeting I went to with the mayors was about 24 hours ago.
Okay.
And the mayor asked the question, and I had him deliver it to their office. And for those mayors who weren't there, I said, drop it at their door.
Okay, so all the mayors, the 19 municipalities will have them already?
So I think as of yesterday, they did 11 of them, I believe, and the rest of them they were doing today.
Is this inclusive of the MREs?
It was water is what they asked me for.
Okay.
I put water and MREs to the shelter. But they could put in the requests into Gov Guam, and I will deliver what they need.
Oh, okay. So it's awaiting a request then?
If they put a request in, I'll deliver more. But I was in the meeting. They asked me for a pallet of water. I said yes.
Okay. So what do you have? You have water, you have MREs, cots, you say, and tents? Or?
Cots, tents, generators, a number of other items that are in there. Even some Red Cross items that's being put out right now to those that are in shelters to help clean up their houses. There's baby and infant toddler formula that we've sent out already.
Okay, so I assume at this point that the mayors know what's in stock, so they can request as they need?
Yeah, I think that they could do that. There's some things that make sense. There's some things that maybe there's better ways to do it. For example, feeding HDRD meals aren't the best meals to eat long term, right? So we'd rather switch over, and right now Red Cross is cooking hot meals through a vendor. So I'd rather go to something like that and give someone a better meal than HDR meal, a humanitarian, which everyone calls an MRE. So they're high calorie, high sodium, so we want to get away from that. Maybe for the first 72 hours, that's good. Now water, it's a continuing issue, so we'll continue to push water out.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank
It's
you.
bottled water in boxes.
Thank you, thank you. Back to Mr. Berdalio. Mr. Berdalio, I know this is not your entity here, but yeah, getting information here we got this morning, of course, medical clinics are really short with their I guess, the water tanks up in the Mangilo area. And they're seeing, I wish public health was here, because supposedly these doctors' clinics are seeing a influx on gastrointestinal problems here on island based on, again, standing water, dirty water, and all that. So the doctors are concerned that they're seeing a rise on, and you said the water and the tap is, you don't have to boil it? Is that you're saying?
No, we've conducted 2 rounds of sampling. In fact, I was just informed that another round, the results just came back all negative, so the water is
Okay.
fine.
Okay, so it's basically then standing water or
I don't know,
yeah,
it could
yeah.
be food that's not refrigerated.
No,
if
and
there's no
food as well,
power.
yeah.
I'm
yeah.
not sure.
Yeah, but they're seeing, I know, the doctors are texting and saying, we're seeing an increase in gastrointestinal problems here, and, from bad water, not necessarily from tap, but the standing water and food as well. So that's why I said, I know this is not your entity, and wish public health was here and seeing if they see a rise on those patients coming in as well. But anyway, going back again, so if you were to, and again, this is just a guesstimate, I guess, at this point, what would your financial needs, you think, in a ballpark figure?
I'm sorry, Senator, I don't have a number to provide you.
Okay. Is there any conversation and maybe abatement for a couple months for water for ratepayers?
So, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Abatement?
Abatement in the next couple months or so?
That's a policy decision that we'll discuss, I'm sure, with the CCU at 5:30 tonight. Our AGM of administration has already broached that subject, so I'm sure we're going to discuss it.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Lujan. Senator Brown.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just before I start, to clarify, are we able to ask Waterworks and FEMA at the same time, or do you prefer another round with FEMA, just so we don't?
I will definitely offer the senators another round for FEMA by themselves, but if they want to combine the questions, you're free to do so. On the second round, we will go to FEMA for their. Okay,
Thank you.
but
I appreciate
actually,
the clarification.
second round, by the way, after GWA, I am going to go to the administration with Senator Rigel, former Senator Rigel, to answer any questions from the administration. But please feel free to ask anyone right now.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Berdalio. I'm sure of all the things on your list, this probably wasn't the one thing you wanted to attend to today. I'm sure you have a lot of operational things to address. With regards to, and I appreciate the update on where we're at, I'm sure our residents out there probably are very anxious for those that don't have water service to get water service back. What is your timeline looking at what's your current capacity of what's operating, what you need to operate? You mentioned that 14%. You're going to have to do a little more work with regards to getting those particular wells back and operational. So what is your estimated timeline, do you think, from where you're at now to where you can get a majority of the water flowing for our island residents?
So with respect to the 14% that you mentioned that require longer-term
Yes.
motor replacements, that's being scheduled now. We do have a request we have to notify Guam EPA when we do these well maintenance procedures. So the first 1 or 2 were announced to Guam EPA today, so we're going to start those as soon as we get the all clear, most likely tomorrow, and then we'll proceed from there. In terms of the wells that could be operating, but for minor repairs or generator issues being repaired, we've already started coordinating with Guam Power Authority. Obviously, they're working several aspects of this. One is just to keep the wells that we do have on generators continuing to run, and then repairing the other ones. So we're trying to give them the major items and then outsource and augment with our own personnel who are mostly, pump station mechanics, but might be able to assist with some of these other repairs. So we're bringing 3 different teams to bear. We are coordinating assessments for that stuff with the outsourced entities tomorrow. So my hope is that within a week's time, we'll be able to get more of these wells online. And then really, ultimately, the time frame for when we're able to get back to full recovery so that everybody has water is largely dependent on those efforts, and also power restoration by Mr. Beneventi. And I've working with him to prioritize feeders that serve our wells. He's well aware of our situation.
And Mr. Beneventi's been at this a long time, so I certainly appreciate that he has continued to contribute his expertise to GPA as well, and having spent quite some time also sitting in your capacity, so I know he's well versed on your system as well. You mentioned that some of these water wells do not have generators, and what is the percentage of your wells that if they were to get back on island power would be able to operate right now?
What is the percentage that would be able to operate if they
Right,
got back
because
on?
it was mentioned earlier that there were some water wells that did not have generators. So if are they damaged, or do you have wells that would be ready to go if they were hooked up to island power?
So I would say about 10% of our wells would be ready to go if they got island power.
Okay.
Senator Brown,
Yes.
there is a point of information from FEMA who would like to present something. Please go ahead. It was a question I think you provided earlier.
Yeah, so you were asking about water wells and putting gens out. So one of the things that Guam Water Authority do is asking us to assess those gens. I have the
Okay.
Corps of Engineers assessing requirements at all the wells now, including the sewer station. The first 10 we're working on installing, and I have a picture of the first one being installed today.
Okay.
Okay, so we're turning them around as quick as we can and pairing them up. I already have, when he talked about the staging of stuff here, I have about 100 generators, give or take, that are here all the time, and I've flown in probably another 100 more on planes. So we have the generators. The Corps of Engineers started coming in here on Saturday, and they've continued to grow in numbers, and they are out there now installing those generators as quick as they can.
Okay, so I'm hopeful then that the water wells that, again, are just lacking power, you'll be able to facilitate getting the generators on and getting those operational. Of the 14% you mentioned, were those already in the cycle for repair prior to the storm, or were they affected by the storm?
Some of them were, as we did for some of the sites that were inaccessible when we started. We got some assistance from Guam Army National Guard to clear some of those sites as we've been able to go in. After the clearing was done and assessed, tried to start them up, we found that some of the motors they were operating before the storm, and then now the motors are grounded. So I would say probably about 3 or 4 sites have been added to that list since the storm.
And then with regards, of course, I mean, we're very focused on water, but your wastewater pump stations, how are you faring with that, and what's the impact of your percentage? What is and is not operational?
In terms of percentages, we have probably about 60% that are operational, 24% which are not operational pending either repair or generators, and just a handful that are usually in situations like this operated on a portable genset, but those are not yet operational. So we have probably close to 30%, I think, that are being impacted by not having power or working generators at this point.
And if you were able to get power, I'm sure, as you mentioned, you're prioritizing this, Mr. Beneventi, what areas, you can help hopefully get his assistance in getting the power to get those either water pumps or pump stations operational.
So the ones up north are more likely to get power quickly. Unfortunately, the way the power system in the south is, the majority of the ones that we normally operate on temporary generator, portable generators, or don't have generators are along Malesso, so on that stretch. And so those always get flooded out. We don't deploy pre-storm for that reason. And so those are the ones that likely will be the last to be powered up. So currently what we're doing to help control flow is using pumper trucks to keep those wet wells empty.
My last question, I guess, with the generators, because most of us were always under the impression the whole idea was to get generators installed on every one of these facilities. I don't know if that's practical. I mean, the long-term maintenance and all the things that have to do. You mentioned that GPA is in charge of that. For those facilities you don't have generators, what is the reason for that? Are these generators were there, they're not maintained, they went down? What is the case?
If you're talking about for the wastewater pump stations, the ones that are located within the road easement themselves, those are the ones that were not originally constructed with the facilities for
Okay.
generators. And
So they just don't have the facilities that were constructed to have them?
right, or the land, or
I
the
see.
land area that would be required. So
I see.
as part of our upcoming or ongoing negotiations with US EPA on consent decree projects, we do have one of the requirements which we plan to do is to upgrade those stations, but again, they would require land acquisition, expansion of the station itself. So those are CIP intensive projects. And
I see.
they're on the plan, but for over the next 5 to 10 years.
Well, I appreciate the clarification. Thank you very much, and good luck. I know it's a tough job. I mean, it's easy for us to talk sitting here versus physically actually getting out and getting things operational, but we certainly hope all your success, because that will benefit our people. Thank you for taking the time to come down and talk with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Vice Speaker Muñoz-Martins.
Sijus Masi, Madam Chair, thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask a couple of questions and comments. First of all, I just want to say thank you to the panel members here. I know that you're supposed to be out there doing a lot of work, and you guys are doing it, so I give my hats off to all of you guys. I did have a question for FEMA and for ADALU, for Senator Rangel. But first, GWA, thank you. I know that I inquired about the status on the water pressure as it relates to those in high areas versus the low areas, and why some areas within the same, in the villages, some have water and next door they don't. So maybe you can just give a summary for that.
So the amount of pressure at any given site is dependent, of course, on the reservoir that serves that site, or a well if it's pressured by a well. But in general terms, for a given area, the folks that live at the higher elevations will see lower pressure until everything is fully restored, and typically the higher areas are the last to be restored. So if you live up high close to a reservoir, just the laws of physics, nothing I can do to change that, but they will be the ones that are they're the first to lose water and the last to get it restored. So.
Thank you. FEMA, as our status as an island jurisdiction or a territory, does the response time or the impact from FEMA differ as it relates to a state versus a territory? And are there any specific formulas that are utilized when determining these factors?
Well, as far as decisions to declare disasters by the president, no. He declared the emergency declaration before landfall. He declared a major declaration immediately upon landfall. Now has done individual assistance within 24 hours. So all those are consistent with big events of this magnitude. I think the complexity out here is just the time and distance, quite frankly. It's not like back in CONUS, the United States, where we could drive trucks to you. You know, there's no bridge long enough to get to Guam. So that's why we stage so much stuff at our warehouse here. I actually, in Region 9, I have California, Arizona, Nevada, and then the rest of the Pacific Island states and territories. And I have one permanent employee at every state or territory that works in their EOC. Here I have 2. And I do that just because of the distance, the time it takes to get things there, resources. So it takes time for DOD to give me assets. As far as air, Transcom, it takes time for me to contract for air, and it takes time for me to get personnel here. So we try to be responsive. I moved 100 people here before the storm, different federal agencies, FEMA personnel, but it's difficult because even from a weather service standpoint, you know, and you watch the track of this event, it moved around a lot. And so we're trying to gauge, like you are, is this going to go right over Guam, or is this going to shoot between Rota and Guam, or is it going to go south of Guam? They kept on moving on us. And from there, we're trying to decide how far do we lean forward? How much resources do we push forward? So we try to make the best decision based on what the impact's going to be, based on what Weather Service tells us. And I think in this job, or in this event, we lean farther forward than we did in Pangsamwa. I was there for that event, and we put many more people here on the ground before this event hit. We've been, the first plane that brought additional responders here was Saturday. If typhoon force winds, tropical force winds stopped on Friday, the next day we had a plane land here with federal responders and FEMA personnel, 2 medical teams, and they're both at the hospitals now. We're installing generators. So we've been pretty, I think, responsive, pretty responsive, but time and distance makes it tough. It's not as easy as California, Arizona, Nevada, because I could drive in a couple hours and be there.
Thank you for that response, Bob. I see BB Mars right next to you, and maybe this next question would be for either of you. As it relates to the administration using any and all resources possible based on what can be utilized, if they were to use existing money that was encumbered, like from the federal grants that have been provided to Guam, like ARP and all that, will that be reimbursable by FEMA if it's utilized? So, I'd like to hear it from both you, Bob, and then Lester.
Let me summarize a discussion that we had before we began this afternoon session. I asked Mr. Fenton, and Mr. Virgil was there. We got reimbursement for traveling nurses and non-congregate shelter expenses under care. That's over and done. Now we're under ARP, specifically the state and local fiscal recovery fund money. And Mr. Fenton, his initial and very strong opinion, which he's researching, just for clarity, is that we won't get the same kind of treatment for reimbursement. So it appears that the best course of action, and I think Mr. Fenton said this earlier, is that the government of Guam, the requesting agency, take the lead in being able to put together a list of eligible costs incurred from the super typhoon, submitted to FEMA, whether it's 75, 25, 90, 10, 100%. As he also mentioned, it'll be months before we get that. But the important thing to remember is that if we do it that way, it's reimbursable. And if we dot our I's and cross our T's, which I think Mr. Fenton will be the first to acknowledge that we have some legacy events that we're still trying to clear up from prior administrations, which FEMA has been very receptive in extending deadlines to us to be able to secure those funds. But it appears, Vice Speaker, that the way to go is to use local funds so that we don't have an issue with the status of whether or not it's reimbursable, not reimbursable. We just have to be diligent in documenting, and the Deputy Chief of Staff can elaborate on the steps that we're taking to ensure that the costs that we've incurred are in fact well documented to a degree that is something that FEMA has been asking from us ever since the prior administration and maybe even before.
So maybe with that being said, Lester, Bob, if you'd like to respond to that with all your experience being here on the island of Guam and being FEMA's representative? How would you rate the response so far by the different administrations and this administration from Guam?
Yeah, so let me first, just your last question, and say that the Stafford Act funding that FEMA manages for the president is supposed to be supplemental assistance, and that's supplemental to insurance. It's supplemental to other federal funding, so we can't duplicate other federal funding. And then we can then use Stafford Act funding to cost share the costs, okay? So it's supplemental. So to your question about can you use other funds, that's my first reaction because that's the way it's always been. However, in the last couple of years with the CARES Act and other funding sources, they've allowed some ability to do some of those things. However, they've put some timelines on it and limited it. So I need to go back and track the specific source. So if it's IRA or if it's some other type of infrastructure funding or supplemental, I need to go back and track and say, if you go use that to procure something, can I now reimburse that cost or not? Or am I prohibited because you use another federal source? Usually I'd be prohibited, but I'm going to go double check now because since COVID's happened, there's been some changes in the way we've done things. My lawyer's checking it just as we walked in here. I texted my lawyer this question. He thought right away, I don't think so. I don't think there's the flexibility to do that, but he goes, let me go ahead and research it. So I'm hoping by tomorrow I'll have an answer. As far as the response capability, I think the governor here is, I was in Pangsanwa, and I did a news conference yesterday with the governor. At this point, there were no lines at the gas stations. The reason why there were no lines is because there was no gas, right? The gas farm was on fire. Electricity, all the telephone poles were down. There's hundreds down, right? This place has done, I think, a tremendous job, and the governor in the last, working with her the last 4 or 5 years, a number of mitigation projects, and the more that we've, over the years, taken our funding and hardened the infrastructure here, the concrete poles, the composite poles, I want to partner with the Guam Water Authority going forward, and I want to use my mitigation money to buy them more generators, right? So that they're ahead of time, so we could go ahead and make a even more resilient Guam. But you guys have made tremendous strides in doing that, and I think the governor has done a great job with everything that's happened, the impacts from power, water, communications being down, and responding to this. As I said, it's been a record response on our end, and the president and everyone is giving us the resources and authorities to help the government of Guam out.
Thank you, Bob.
Madam Vice Speaker, Mr. Berdallo has a CCU meeting at 5:30 for those resolutions spoke about earlier. So if I may ask that the senators who have any questions for Mr. Berdallo to ask them now, and then we will come back, and circle around, of course, to ask the rest of the panel, everyone from Homeland Security. So if you could direct now all your questions because of the time frame directly to Mr. Berdallo. If you don't have any, we'll go to the next, and we'll just ask for
Thank
those
you,
questions.
Madam Chair, but just for the record, and I will yield my time back to you based on that. But I want to note that this morning there was a lot of passion and emotions that were presented, and I didn't ask. I asked Adelup a question, but they said no. We're going to leave it just to the president of the Mayor's Council first, and I think it's only fair that Senator Clint Rigel be able to respond to all those questions that were asked and all those inquiries that were asked, because it does relate to how water's gotten to us. It does relate to how FEMA is working with us, and that's why I asked the question to FEMA, because it's all there. It's a trickle effect. It's a domino effect, and everybody wants water. I take water any day over any other utility because it's that vital. But I think hearing the response from FEMA, knowing that there is that we are doing a good job, considering This may be the problem right now, the communication, because there's no services. And maybe we should have asked the private vendors that are utilizing this, that we are dependent upon, that maybe what is the update there and how is that information going through? So I know he's got a meeting, but
Yeah,
I
thank you.
literally wanted Adelut to answer. So
And we will, Madam Vice Speaker, we will
Thank you.
offer them the opportunity. So if you don't mind, do you
Thank
have
you.
any questions for
I know,
Mr. Bennett?
he
Okay.
answered that, and
Okay.
I want to thank you, Miguel, and to your team, to those guys, because they're tirelessly working, and there may be a leak in Pago Bay on Route 4 down at the bottom of the hill. Somebody should check that. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice Speaker. Senator Shelton, any questions to Mr. Berdallo, please?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Hafaday, Mr. Berdallo, thank you for taking the time to be with us to answer questions this afternoon. We heard a lot of different dates and timelines for repairs, especially for ones that need some equipment that you need from off-island or parts that you need from off-island. But can you give us your best estimate for the whole island being back with water, running water, your services?
As I mentioned, my ability to estimate that is entirely dependent on getting power restored, especially to those areas where we don't have backup generators. But I'm hopeful that within a couple of weeks, we should have all of our critical wells up and running. You know, as a best estimate that I could give you right now, if I had to give you a number. I'm not basing that on anything other than the progress I've seen so far and the difficulty I think that Mr. Benventi is going to have in kind of isolating our assets from everything else that happens to be on the same circuit. You know, if there are other buildings or facilities that are connected and you know, we're ready to go, but they're not, that may delay the ability for us to restore power to that feeder. So there's those types of complications, but based on what I've seen, they are working very hard. So that's, you know, if I had to give an estimate, that's what I would give it. Sorry.
So no estimate, really, just based on what we can do with GPA's response.
So
GWA's response is dependent on GPA.
Our ability to get to normal for everybody is dependent on that, yes.
Okay, got it. There were a couple senators back. There was a question about waiving water bills, and you said that there would be a discussion about that today in the CCU meeting, or possibly a discussion about it?
So any water that is consumed, of course, we have to charge for, but in terms of, you know, grace periods or anything like that, that is a policy decision for the CCU. I have notes, I've taken notes that we will just make sure to bring that up. I know the AGM has already broached that subject with me and has some thoughts on it, so we will discuss it with the CCU.
Okay, and I know that you're not GPA, but you're the only utility here, and so would that, do you know if that is also a possibility for GPA customers?
I will say that the CCU typically likes our policies to be lockstep, so I'm fairly certain if they make a policy for us, it's going to apply also to GPA.
So
And inconsistent with bond covenants.
Yes, of course. So there's no commitment, but there is a possibility of a grace period or a deferment.
Yes, or payment plans, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you to your team, the men and women who are working hard. We've been seeing them out. We're very grateful for what they're doing. There are a lot of things I know that are beyond our control, but we are grateful for all of your work. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Shelton. Madam Speaker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Miguel, for being here. Appreciate the work you've been doing. I'm getting text messages saying we shouldn't have you here at all, that you shouldn't have to answer to us, and we should just let you go do your work. But I know that you go to briefings every day at the governor's office, or somebody from your office does. And I think it's very important that we get to the bottom of, we're being asked to give out $50 million to the governor, and that is going to result in quicker recovery. And I think everybody's number one suffering is lack of water. And I think they're suffering. I'm going to say it that way. And so I want to get to the bottom line of your needs. So you're saying that they aren't giving you emergency money at this point. You're taking care of everything with your ratepayers' money. But you've listed out the needs of generators, and it sounds like 30% of your water wells need generators. And if they had generators, maybe more of the people of Guam would have water in their houses. Is that correct?
No, the 30% number includes sites that might need minor repairs or some other repairs, not just a generator issue. So, to isolate just that, I don't have that percentage in front of me. But if we had, obviously, for those critical sites that we would like, we will make the request to FEMA. If there are generators that could be supplied, then we would try to get them connected sooner rather than later, and we're balancing that with how quickly we think certain circuits can be restored. It doesn't make sense to have them provide a generator and the very next day Mr. Benavente is going to have us restored. So we have to balance those kinds of decisions, and it's a moving target.
All right, I don't know if everybody would agree, because they want water, and even 1 day of water in advance of waiting for a GPA crew is very critical at this point. They're going 6 days without water. So how many generators do you need to provide more water into the people's homes if it's not 30%? You're saying it's less.
I'm saying that the number is a moving target, and as we have portable generators, or GPA has provided vendor generators based on whatever contracts they have. As we get, as an example, Fujita Pump Station has one. We're relocating that to service another well. So again, it is a moving target, and I don't have a specific number to give you right now.
Well, have you requested, why I'm asking is because have you requested a certain number of generators, because that would restore water to the people? Or did we wait for FEMA in order to give us 10 generators? Have you requested before that for generators, if that's all you needed? GPA was in here and said, well, told me that they operate 145 of your generators, but you said only 90 of them were online. And that's not making sense to me, that if we need generators, that we're going to wait.
Well, the 90 refers to the number of well sites that were online. We have generators both on the water side and the wastewater side. So the total number of facilities that they operate is, if they're quoting you that number, then that's the correct number. I'm not disputing it.
All right, so the water wells, 90 generators.
No. 90 water wells.
Oh, 90 water wells, and 30% of those need generators.
No, 30% are not operating for either a repair that needs to be made or a generator issue.
No, you said 48% of your wells are operating, so that means 52% are not. And you said 30% of those that are not operating need generators, and 14% need motor replacements or entire pumps replaced.
So the 30% refers to well sites that we have which are non-operational because either of a generator issue or they need additional repairs either by GPA or by us. The 14% are the ones that require motor changeouts, which is a different issue altogether.
All right, I'm just trying to get to a number of generators that is going to help people get water. And was there any other source that you were looking to for generators, if that was going to help them get water before FEMA? Or we were just waiting to see what FEMA would give? Because they have 100, they've only given you 10. And so I want to know, what is your need?
The request that we made initially was for those that included our most critical producing wells at the time that we made the request, our most critical producing wells, and the water booster pump stations that we know do not have any generators. The request was made based on the early information that we had. Assessing everything else as we progress, if there is additional needs, we will identify them, and then we will make the request to FEMA. But there was some confusion in our part as to the beginning of whether that was going to be made by us or whether it was going to be made by GPA, because GPA owns and operates the majority of the generators that service our facilities. So as far as the process goes with FEMA, we made our request for we knew we needed.
Was that 10?
That was the initial request was 10.
But not everybody's water is restored.
No, ma'am. And generators only will not restore everybody's water.
Yeah, you need 14% of the wells need motor replacements. How are you going to get those, and how soon are you going to get those?
We're already working on that. We have one, as I mentioned, we have a request into Guam EPA to get their clearance so that we can start the first one. We can only do them one at a time.
What do you mean?
Because it's a major, our permit requirements and the regulations require us to notify Guam EPA whenever we do major maintenance on a well. And even in this emergency situation, we are still following the proper protocols. So we notify them today. We have one scheduled and planned, and we will, once we conduct that one, we will move on to the next one. We are also, again, that's another moving target. Which one do we change out? It depends on, we need to change out the motors where we know we have either a working generator or island power, so that we're making the most efficient progress at trying to restore water flow into the system.
So if you've requested the number of generators that you need, and you are working on the motor replacements one by one, then there is nothing else that anybody can do to help you get water faster? Not money, not FEMA, not anybody?
We will use whatever services are available to us to try and expedite restoring all of those wells to service. And working with GPA is one, using our own internal resources is one, and contracting out services is another, and we're trying to get that on board right now.
Okay, what do you mean by just trying to get that? Because those are the kind of answers that the people, I think, are really just growing impatient with. When, it's been 6 days, so when you say we're trying to get contractors on board, I mean, we're in the middle of an emergency. I'm going to ask AUTHORIZE's representative later,
the assessments,
what's the deal with that? I would think that is why you're meeting with the governor, because you need assistance with certain things to expedite them.
So the assessment and the scope of work that for these repairs needs to be identified based on what has happened, and so that's the part that is as of now unknown, and once we get that identified, then the services will be contracted.
And that is being done by your team? You're saying
yes.
It's the assessment that's still in progress that is delaying contracting with contractors?
Yes.
All right, and when do you estimate your assessment will be done?
Within 2 days.
From today?
Yes.
Before FEMA's 10 generators, they said yesterday? Is that yesterday?
What I said was that FEMA assessed 10 generator locations given to us by Guam Water Authority. It's actually the Corps of Engineers 249th Power Battalion that's doing the assessments. And we today put the first install in of a generator.
So we still need to put in the 9. This assessment then,
Sorry.
are you relying on the Army Corps' assessment? Or that's just in order to get FEMA generators, but to, yeah.
That's their process.
Yes, okay, I understand. That's why I want to concur with you.
Yeah, separate process. Just if
Yes.
we're going to install one of our generators, we're going to assess it first.
I understand.
And then
That makes
install.
sense. But for you, so you've done your assessment because we've got these numbers in your reports that are coming out. Thank you for these that show how many generators are operating because of no generator, or not operating because of lack of generator, right? Did you have another source of generators?
GPA has sources for generators.
Okay. All right. So did I hear you correctly estimate to my colleague a couple weeks before the rest of the water's restored? Not talking about, certain peculiar cases, but generally?
Generally,
You're saying 2
that was what I was estimating how long it would take for us to get a sufficient number of wells operating so that we could start to build sufficient water levels in our reservoir so that everybody has water.
What villages are going to come online in the next couple of days that are not yet online?
So I think for most villages, we have partial service, so I can't give you any numbers by village. We don't have a smart meter network like GPA does where they can identify which customers have power just by looking at a computer screen. What I can say is that as we get more water in, the areas with higher elevations within any given village will start to see their water come on.
So you're saying that you put partial into every village already, and it's only those that have pressure needs, higher pressure needs, that are not getting water?
Essentially.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Berdalio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Barnett, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Berdalio, and thank you to the hardworking employees of the Guam Waterworks Authority for working hard.
Thank you.
It's just so confusing, and I get where the previous speaker is coming from, because it just seems like back in the day, the way the information was reported was, okay, this village got water, we're working on this village next, and it's just hard, I think, for the people of Guam to kind of sort through this. 48% of wells are doing this, 30% are doing that, 12% are doing a hop, skip, and a jump. So we're trying to figure that out, but then also I really want to know, how do we prevent this from happening again? I mean, I understand it was a Category 4 typhoon, but it sounds like you have generator issues that were caused maybe not by the typhoon, but maybe maintenance. So can you elaborate on that, if that's the case?
So I wouldn't necessarily agree with that statement, but I understand the perception. If you're asking me how can this be avoided, I would say if we harden the infrastructure specifically to the well sites by putting in dedicated underground lines to a string of wells along a certain route, that would definitely help. I've already had discussions with the chairman about doing that, and as a CIP planning between both agencies post-storm. So that would help in how we can avoid this. We currently have an arrangement for how the generators are maintained and operated. We could take a look at that and see if there's any way to improve on that. And
I guess just right off the bat on that, do you think offhand that there are ways that you can improve on the maintenance of these generators, and who's responsible for the maintenance?
Sorry, the maintenance and operation of the generators is the responsibility of the Power Authority.
And I guess just to expand on your previous point, you said that you may take a look at this arrangement, this agreement, and see where it might need improvement. Do you know offhand?
Offhand, I would say that augmenting the ability of GPA to maintain the generators themselves, that might be something that we could do. GWA used to have maintenance staff, but when the CCU put out the policy that GPA would take over, that division or section of GWA got retasked to other things. So I'm not necessarily in favor of us redoing that, because it's not our core skill set, if you will. It belong in GPA's bailiwick. It's in their wheelhouse. But in order to provide additional services, could we contract some of that out? That might be something that we should be discussing and looking at in the future.
So are you saying here on the record then that there are issues with the maintenance of these generators that's supposed to be conducted by the Guam Power Authority?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that in order to improve on how we do things and to make us more resilient for these types of events, that would be a good option to consider.
Can you kind of go over, if you don't mind, your numbers relative to how many of the actual generators were down because of mechanical issues and not necessarily storm damage? Do you have an estimate?
I don't have those numbers in front of me, Senator, and I don't have those memorized.
Was it 10, 20?
Sorry, I can't give you a number.
But so basically what you're saying in a nutshell is that we can go back after you're done with the restoration and the recovery and look at how we can prevent this from happening again by hardening the infrastructure and improving the maintenance of these generators, so that in the event of a severe storm, the chances of us at least, being able to still have water are increased?
I would say that's accurate.
Is there any other message you have for the people of Guam during this difficult time?
Of course, we would ask for their continued patience and also to be cognizant of the fact that we are still trying to fill up the reservoirs. So please use your water appropriately if you do have it. Everybody has seen people, I think, water blasting the exterior of their homes or washing their cars. I mean, understand that everybody wants to do that, but we are trying to conserve water as much as possible to help us fill up the reservoir. So we ask for the public's support in that effort.
So in other words, no water blasting for now, or car washing. Well, somebody washed their car because it's raining. Thank you, Mr. Berdalio, for your hard work and your attendance here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Barnett. Senator Duenas, do you have any questions or comments?
Just Mossy, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Miguel, for your valuable time and being here in regards to the team and all the efforts that they're trying to pull this off. Just one question. Many questions have been asked already. At the risk of possibly sounding like a micromanager, but I want to get Bob in here too, simply because I've worked on redundant systems before. You mentioned that some of the generators that are being assessed for repairs, possibly panels or electrical circuits or things of that nature. However, I think time is of the essence. Bob, if the request came in for you to mobilize the generators that you have and get it there as a redundant system running until the main generator comes up, is that something that we could do? Because I just think that time is of the essence right now.
That's what we're doing right now. So we got the request we actually got a request to look at 11 sites. I think one of the sites had damage, so we couldn't do anything. 10 sites we've assessed now. We've paired them to generators in our inventory, and the Corps out installing. The first one went in today. I'm sure many more will go in tomorrow.
Okay, great. So if it grows from the 10?
It'll continue to grow, and we're looking at not only GWA, but many other locations that need generators. So we're out everywhere assessing and starting the install process.
So would you say in your work with the Army Corps and your system, as they say, in place, should start picking up in terms of becoming
every day more will get installed and things will get better. And I'm sure at the same time, power will continue to come and somewhere in the middle will meet, temporary power with permanent power.
I've seen your inventory. It's very impressive. And I just want to thank you and your team and everything you've done to forward deploy. So once again, Miguel, I know you know what you're doing, but I just wanted to bring that up because it seems like throughout the discussion, that's where we were at. And it just seems logical that if there's a warehouse full of generators, let's get them out there. And then as our repairs come online, feed them back up.
Yeah,
that's all
we're flying more in too, so we're going to make sure there's enough here to do the job.
Right on. That's all I have. Miguel, it's a battle out there. We know that, and people are counting on you and your team, so just don't want to take more of your time. And thanks for your efforts and what you're trying to do. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Duenas. Minority Leader Blas.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Berdalio, thank you very much. Just a couple short things. GWA still responsible for water buffaloes into the villages for them?
We do provide tanker services.
Okay, because I'm noticing that there are a number of different places that are low on water, but mayors actually taking on the task of being able to provide the villages with the water where normally there'd be a water buffalo.
I think in certain instances it's both. We do have flex tanks that are staged, and they're also going to the mayor's office, but we have deployed 9. We have an additional 8 that we're seeking additional containers from the Port Authority so we can deploy those where they're needed. The tankers that we have, as I mentioned, we are using to service medical facilities and the hospital, and so those are on constant rotation for refilling.
Okay, is there a shortage right now of water buffaloes that you'd be able to deploy?
I think we purchased these flex tanks for each village, but the shortage is in getting the 20-foot containers and chassis.
Okay. Well, then one last thing is, and it's in a conversation that you don't have to be responsible for, but it's related. Maria Yojoa, one of the shelter sites, they've got low water pressure. Is there a way you can get somebody up there to check on their water pressure?
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll save my Maria Jo question for everybody else. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Blas. Senator San Augustine?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Simple question for GWA. What was the status of GWA before the storm? How many reservoirs, how many wells, how many whatever? What was their status?
So approximately 20 to 23 reservoirs in operation, which are still in operation. Approximately 90 wells in operation. That number is down by 52%. And one surface water treatment plant operating at 2 million gallons a day, currently operating at about half of that.
Okay. Now I heard you and I watched the news, trying to fill the wells, the reservoirs. What was the status of the reservoirs before the storm?
The reservoirs under normal operation fluctuate. On average, they're at 50% full. They recharge during the evening hours after everybody goes to bed. When everybody wakes up in the morning, all that high demand drops the reservoir levels down to about 15%, and then they get refilled during the day, and then at 6 p.m., people start coming home. Again, periods of high demand, the levels drop. That's the reason why we have reservoirs, is to absorb those changes in demand.
I'm just trying to understand, you mentioned earlier with a couple of my colleagues, is that there are some areas that have water and some don't. In Jigo alone, what would you say the percentage of the residents there have water?
Sorry, sir, I cannot give you, again, I mentioned the meter numbers. I don't have a percentage to give you.
Mr. Miguel, I have a problem when somebody can't, running an agency that goes to the bond, that asks for a possible increase in rates. I know for a fact you also run the sewer treatment, correct?
That's correct.
Has there been a proposal or an upgrade on any of our sewer treatments? Any of our lines, our sewer lines?
Yes.
There has? Has there been new sewer lines dug up and placed in the villages?
Not at the village level.
I know, because if you said there was, I live in an area for over 26 years, and we're all in septic tanks, and everybody in there is almost $1 million homes. And I'm trying to understand why. And I'm up north. And everybody talks about protecting the aquifer. And I'm trying to understand, and then I know for a fact, not even a mile away from my house, there are 3 large cylinders up in Jigo. You know those ones they fill up with water? I'm trying to understand why we don't have water up there. And that's very bothersome for me. And I know for a fact the employees at GWA are hardworking. I have reservation with management, but I have no problem with any of the employees, and I know a lot of them. But that's why I asked the question, and I would actually ask you that in the future, get your numbers together, get estimates, so that when we ask the question, you give us an answer. Because we don't want to waste your time, and we don't want you to waste our time. And when you speak to the CCU, because we'll be reaching out to the CCU and asking them those questions. And I have a lot of reservations when I heard that you said you're going to wait for GPA to power you up. I see a gentleman here to your left, my right, that says that if you said you needed 20 or 30 generators today, he could give you, by going on and doing a quick assessment, and all they're going to do is match up a generator with what it needs to run. And the only reason I know that that's how it works, so that's how the military does business. You have a machine, you need a generator, we're going to make sure we give you the right generator to run that machine. And then they'll just place it. Not unless the area you were saying earlier that you need a GPA to bring in the line. Generators can go anywhere and power up anything it needs to power up. And that's why, Ms. Miguel, I have some serious reservations what's going on in GWA. And with that, I'm not going to waste my time or waste your time. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator San Agustin. Thank you, Mr. Bordalio. We are still in the round for GWA questions, Senator San Nicolas, and then we'll end with Senator Kanata.
Hi, good afternoon, sir. Thank you for taking your time to be here. Are you doing everything humanly possible within your grasp and your abilities to try to restore water to the people who have lost it during this very, very devastating storm? Have you?
I believe I have.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions. Thank you for your hard work, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator San Nicolas. Senator Kanata.
Sir, thank you for your time. Thank you to all the GW employees who are continuing to work tirelessly throughout the night, throughout the day. I wish them all the best, and let us know what we can do as a body to ensure that this doesn't happen again and make sure that we can shore up and harden our systems. I know it's a significant investment. It's definitely going to need a bond market and a lot of appropriation. And of course, you know, it comes down to how much we're willing to spend for all of this infrastructure investments. But it's the only way to make everything in better shape, right, is you have to do something different. You kind of keep doing the same thing. So it's my hope that with FEMA here again and the leadership that we can get these things done and over dealt with. I know you have a meeting you're probably late for, effective right now, 5:31. So I wish you all the best and let us know what we can do. Thank you again to all the hardworking people that are continuously trying to deliver water to all the people of Guam.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kanata. We will take a moment's recess. Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Parkinson, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to have a quick few questions. People basically want to know, when's the fastest we're going to get our water back? Or what's the timeline you have?
My best estimate at this point is that we will be able to get sufficient wells operational within a couple weeks to start filling up our reservoirs to the point such that all residents have water. But it's not going to be overnight. It's going to take a couple of weeks at least.
Okay, if we were to have another typhoon in another 3 months, would you be satisfied with the current state of preparedness?
It's a difficult question to answer. I'm not sure.
So what have you guys done, like an after action review, lessons learned on what things you could have done better on your end? Like, I'm trying to figure out how we as a body could help you get water up as fast as possible.
No, we've not done that. That's something that is in progress.
Okay. I guess just what else can we do as a body to assist GWA in your mission? Like, we just want to get people water up as fast as possible. What do we got to do to help expedite that dream?
A more resilient water system is heavily dependent on capital improvement projects. We have prepared a 20-year plan and 5-year CIPs. Support from this body in advancing the CIP program to the necessary authorizations for bond issuances to support the CIP. Those are going to be required. That's how I see that this body could assist.
Okay, I have no further questions for GWA. Let's get the resources moving and get that matching funds from FEMA as soon as possible.
Thank you, Senator Parkinson. We'll take a moment's recess. Thank you to Mr. Bordalio from Guam Waterworks. Thank you.
Rules call back to order. Colleagues, one round, keep it simple, ask questions for FEMA, and we move on. We need to get to the bill. That's what we're here for in the emergency. We'll begin with Senator Fisher.
Thank you, sir. No questions.
Thank you, Senator Canata. Thank you. Senator Lujan, do you have any questions for FEMA?
Yes, it was answered already. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brown.
No, I don't, but I certainly want to thank FEMA for being here and the assistance. Good to see you again. Appreciate your continued contribution. Yeah, I know there's a lot of frustration out there, but the fact that you're here to assist us is most appreciated. Thank you. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Vice Speaker, do you have any questions for
Thank
FEMA?
you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I literally appreciate FEMA being here and answering my inquiry earlier in reference to the administration's work and how they've been doing the recovery on our island. And I was really hoping that the Senator Clint will still be here, but I understand he's headed to another meeting. But since he's gone, I just want to say, Bob, I really appreciate your comments. I really appreciate that Guam continues to do good in this recovery efforts, and it's going to take a long time. Communication is important. We don't have the phone service right now, but we're trying our best. And if FEMA can literally help assist in providing, whether it be generators or the process for the mayors to have the equipment they need, that's what we need to do. And I'm really sorry that we took you away from having to do all that, but I guess the people of Guam needed to hear it. So any comments further to that?
No, I appreciate your comments. You know, disasters bring the best and the worst out in people, and to me, it's those states and territories I go to that exceed is where they come together and focus on one set of objectives and goals, not only at the governmental level, but at state, local, and private sector level, including nonprofits. We all have to collectively, whether it's federal government, state government, local government, private sector, nonprofits, it has to be one team, one fight. If we don't do that and we don't work toward the common good of the people that we're here to serve, the people that have been impacted by the storm, it just prolongs the recovery from these storms. So I appreciate your comments. I've been in FEMA for 26 years. I'm a career federal employee, so I'm not political. I've been the acting administrator for FEMA for President Trump and for President Biden, and I've been here for many storms in the past. It's impressive where we're at, but it does take time for infrastructure to come up. I think we've gotten to a social media age, you know, kind of like Star Trek, where you can beam it up. Things don't beam up. Things take time, and there's progression to get things online and make them operational. We are going to move as fast as we can to get everything we have from the federal government perspective to support Guam. DOD's been amazing. They've brought ships here. They've sent planes for me. Corps of Engineers is here. You know, every other federal agency, HHS is here with medical teams in your hospitals right now. Anything we could do, we are going to do as fast as we can do it. One thing I did want to say that's really important while I was here is yesterday we had a press conference and we talked about the individual assistance program. And it's really important that people start applying for that program, because if we're really going to help your residents recover, we got to help them with the damages to their homes. And so I urge people that are listening to this to start that process. You know, as I mentioned yesterday, disasterassistance.gov. Go on there and apply there. You can phone the 1-800-621-3362 FEMA number. And then I talked about disaster recovery centers will be set up. So we'll set up 3 to 6 disaster recovery centers geographically located across the island, where people come in and it'll be a one-stop shop of federal and state agencies. And then also you could download the FEMA app, and that will help you register. But please register, call your insurance if you can, register. And then there's a lot of programs that have been built to help people. And on our experience from you two, there's a lot of unique things that we could do that we've learned since Typhoon Mawar. that we'll bring here from our lessons learned and hopefully help the recovery even more. And then to a lot of your guys' points that have been brought up, not only do we want to help you recover, but we want to help you build back stronger. We really do. We want to focus money on mitigation, which is another 75-25% cost share. But there will be money set aside in mitigation money. Usually 15% of all the money we spend here gets put in a pot that can be used for hardening things. So if we want to, if collectively, Guam decides to go ahead and harden generators and have them there beforehand, they can do that. Those are projects we did at CNMI. We've done those in Hawaii. I think we've even done a couple here. There may be other projects to harden schools to make them better for shelters and those kind of things. So we're here, and we know this is going to be a process, but we'll work with everyone to communicate everything we can to get you to recover as quick as possible.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Bob, you talked earlier about the split being 75-25 at this time, and I know that in previous storms, the governor was able to get us at a better rating, like a 90-10. What steps do we need to take, or we can help assist to see if that can be acquired or that can be done?
Yeah, so as I mentioned a little earlier, one's in the regulations. One's in the regulations. Me or who? Is he talking to who?
No, you.
Oh, I thought the guy in the back was talking to me. Oh, he's going behind me. He was giving me a hand sign. I thought he was talking to me. I was like, want me to plug something in? I was like, I don't know what to plug in. So one is in the regulations, and when you get to $106 per capita, so what's that look like for Guam? If you roughly have 160,000 people and you multiply it, that's about $160-something million, $170 million. If we spend that much money here in the different grant programs, that's one of the ways that's a threshold that changes it to 90-10. Okay, that's one way. The other way is based on significant impact. The governor, once we start to understand what that impact is and quantify the dollars that we're going to spend here, the governor could write a letter to the president, and that's happened before. It usually happens about maybe 30 days in, where they start to get a better idea of the overall impact, and they can write a letter to the president. Typically, the president in the past has done things like focus on emergency protective measures and made them 100%. Or 90%, either for a portion of the time or the whole time, depending on how bad it is. Maybe debris removal, because there's a lot of debris out there, and maybe he wants to, maybe the request is move debris removal to 90 or 100%. Typically, we don't do permanent work, so things that are like permanent damaged structures, the cost here typically remains 75-25 unless you meet the $100 per capita, and then it goes to 90-10.
Thank you. And one more, Mr. Chair, as it relates to the Mr. Chair, if you can yield back to me as soon as I...
One other thing, earlier, they talked about delivery of water, and they asked me, where we put it at. I think it was you, Senator, over here that asked me that. So we've delivered it. I went and checked, exactly where it's gone. And the 4 shelters, water and food. The mayor's offices, most of them have been met today with water, either yesterday, today. I think the one that will be done tomorrow is Melissa, if I'm saying that right, I apologize for my pronunciation. And that has to do with being able to contact them, set up a drop-off. We have, as we talked about, the water in the warehouse. And as there more mayors need more pallets of water, we will continue to deliver. There's nothing that constrain us at this point to deliver more water as needed.
So the last question, Mr. Chair, was about the application and the process that FEMA was saying that people can start. We still don't have power and some of the accessibilities to take photos and all that. But the mayors and the administration is saying they're going to start picking up debris.
That's
and they're going to start cleaning. So how do you clean up? I mean, if we clean up the evidence and it's not seen and they come up.
Take a picture with your phone.
But a lot of them don't have that access because they don't even have power or
yeah, well,
generation.
keep receipts if you pay for anything. And what we'll do, there's a couple things that will happen. One, I have about 30 employees that are flying out tomorrow that are called disaster assistance employees, and I'm getting up to about 100 in the next couple of days. And I'm going to send them out across the different villages to help with, explain our program. They'll have palm pads that they could take information in and register people in the palm pad, and they download it back at their hotel or something like that. So we will help people register that aren't able to get out. We'll set up sites where people can come and register at, where there's ability to do Wi-Fi or use our machines to register. And in the meantime, document. Even if you have to get a pad, a paper, and pen and say, here's what I lost. If you have any records from that, keep them. If you can take a picture, take a picture. If you have a receipt, get a receipt. And then we will go ahead and work with those individuals on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Bob, for being here and literally taking the time to help assist Guam. Sana Masi.
Thank you, Senator Shelton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Bob. Great to meet you. Nice to have you here with us to answer these questions, and thanks to your team for assisting what you've already done and what we know you will do in the months ahead in advance. Thank you very much. I wanted to know if there is a list already that you can provide to us that tells us what are reimbursable claims for the government of Guam.
Yeah, actually, I sent 4 one-page sheeters to all the mayors.
Okay.
That gives them information on individual assistance, that gives information on our public assistance program and what records to keep. I gave them guidance on contracting, do's and don'ts of contracting. We have certain contracting requirements that have to be followed for reimbursement. And so I gave these kind of one-sheeters to kind of help them, but glad to give them to you guys. I think your key is public officials, because constituents listen to you, and to arm you with the information, it will only help us. And also what I would urge you to do, as you get the questions, get them back into us, because then we know where to focus people maybe that need better clarity of the answers and where we're not being clear at, or maybe we're not reaching a population. One of the big things FEMA's done in this administration has been focused on it is not only equity, but social vulnerable populations and how to reach out to them. And so any help you can give us in that respect allows us to focus, whether it's languages, special, types of maybe sign language or other types of ways to reach out to individuals. If you can let us know, we will then use those to help communicate.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I know that we received through messages from our representative here in the legislature, the form for the sheet for the individual assistance. We've been sending that out to our constituents. They're very grateful for that information, and they do have a lot of questions. And so when we field those questions, is there a local number that we can reach you at?
Yeah, you want my cell phone number?
Oh,
no,
not your cell phone number, but if you do, when you start setting up the local offices, I guess, do you already have a...
Yeah, so we have, we're at the EOC, and we're setting up a joint field office. But typically what we do is we set up intergovernmental calls with elected officials. So maybe what we should do is set up, one maybe with the mayors, then maybe one with other elected officials like you all. Mm-hmm. And we do those maybe every so many days that we need to answer questions, and then maybe it gets to every week, maybe it gets longer, right, as we go further in. But we could set those up and then have the subject matter experts on the call. So as you have questions, we could then answer your questions. And we do that all over the country, is set those up to answer elected leaders' phone messages or questions.
I think that would be greatly appreciated. I know that's something that we did during COVID, and the calls were first every couple of days, and then once a week, as you said, and now they're every couple of months. We get the notification to jump on these calls. So yes, I would appreciate that. But I wanted to ask if you could speak specifically to what government spending will be reimbursable, so that we can have an idea of what this $50 million of money that we're allowing the governor to spend will be spent on. I mean, we have an idea, the green waste, the big projects, but what else can we expect this money to be spent on?
Well, so what I could speak to is my authority and what I could reimburse and what's cost shared from FEMA. There's obviously going to be many costs that I cannot cover that Guam will have to figure out how to cover. Some of those are underneath other federal agencies' authorities, and they may be able to bring in further resources, but there will still be gaps. And so I think what you're asking is, one, what can I cover so that you get an idea of what I'm covering? Two, what may be the gaps, right? So first, let me start out with what I can cover. What I could cover is individuals who are primary homeowners or renters who either are uninsured or don't have sufficient insurance. I could go ahead and provide them a grant up to $41,000 to help them repair, replace their house, help them with things like medical bills if they sustain them from this event, funeral expenses, things like maybe they lost certain pieces of critical, maybe their tools for work, maybe even something that they need in the house like medical equipment, those kind of things. Those things are all eligible that we provide a direct grant. That's not cost shared, that's between me and Mrs. Guam, whoever on the island, right? There will be individuals that are not eligible for that program. The COFA, the individuals here that come from Micronesia, unless they have someone born here in the United States that's in their household, they're not eligible for that program, okay? So that's gonna be a gap of how do we help those individuals out, because they're gonna have losses. I went through the northern part of the island already and saw a lot of damages up there to their houses, which are already, especially the 30-year lease houses, already have limitations.
But if they have a child who is
If they
a
have a
U.S.
child
citizen,
here,
they would be eligible.
They could apply underneath the child's name.
Okay.
In addition to that grant, we can go ahead and provide rental assistance to temporary rent something until they repair, replace, fix their house. That rental assistance is based on the fair market rental rate and can be given, we usually give 2 months up front, and then what we do is based on need and a permanent housing plan, we go ahead and extend that. It can be extended up to 18 months. That does not impact the $41,000 grant. I would say just typically very few people get the $41,000 grant. The average I see in disasters is somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 typically, but it depends. Every disaster is different, and there could be unique needs. So that's individual assistance. In addition to that, they could ask for SBA. They get low interest loans for individuals, for businesses, and get assistance there. Also, HUD provides money, funding to individuals, and typically even sometimes CDBGR money for long-term type of mitigation or gaps within federal funding. And that is not automatic. That happens sometimes, not all the time. So you really need to talk to someone from HUD. Also, there's funding from like SNAP. You heard yesterday the food program, USDA, provides funding for replacement of groceries and people that are on SNAP, but also people that are not on SNAP. And so there's a number of programs for individuals. Moving away from individuals, I could pay for debris removal, 25%. That's debris removal by public entities, the village mayors, Guam Public Works, or they could ask me to do it. Right now, all three are happening. I have the military removing debris. They're opening rights of way, and they're also moving to, they open routes, and now they're doing rights of way debris removal.
Can you clarify? There was a little bit of discussion with DPW earlier today about the green waste removal only being covered when it's on the easement. Is that true? And if they're only in EPA-approved staging sites?
Yeah, I don't want to speak to Guam's debris plan. And I understand that they have pre-approved sites that debris has to be moved to, but I'll let Guam speak to their plan on how they intend to move it. But our authority is public rights of way. So if you want to remove debris off of someone's house, right, someone's property, they need to move it to the right of way. Typically, that's what happens in hurricane, in the southeast, is we allow them to move it to the right of way, and then the public entity, whether it be us or the local entity, in this case Guam Public Works, then goes ahead and picks it up. We're not going to pay for green waste, not green waste, we're not going to pay for garbage. So if there's an existing service, we don't reimburse, for garbage service because there's already a fee charged for that, right? So it's really the green waste or any other debris caused by the hurricane, the typhoon, that we would then reimburse for.
Okay, our solid waste authority announced that they would be picking up waste trash from every household, whether or not they're a customer. And so that is not an existing service. Would that be something that FEMA would reimburse?
Typically, what we would say is that for individuals that, so we don't pay for waiving of dump fees, which is one of the things that's happening. We don't reimburse that. Two, we don't reimburse for entities that have the ability to charge, that provide a service that could charge. So we don't pay for example, let's just say back to water, that they weren't going to charge people for water, the discussion that was happening earlier. I can't pay for that cost that they could have charged, right? Okay, so same thing with garbage. I can't pay for things that could be charged because they could charge the fee for that to get back that revenue that they've lost. But I can pay for everything that is typhoon related. They need to document it. That's a big deal. Debris is a difficult thing that takes a lot of oversight and monitors to do it right. I know there's an issue with already in the green waste piles of making sure it's only green waste going in there. So we will also pay to any typhoon debris that is white goods or metals that need to be recycled or the hazmat taken out. We could go ahead and reimburse those costs. So that's debris. The last thing we pay for is permanent restoration of publicly owned infrastructure that was in use before, that was operational and damaged as a result of the storm. So roads, if they were damaged, water systems, if they were damaged as a result of the storms, public buildings, and these all have to be publicly owned, utilities, if they're publicly owned, and parks, maybe trails and other things. But it can't be a natural feature. We don't pay to replace grass, but anything that's built, that's engineered, that's maintained, we would pay to bring it back to pre-disaster condition, whatever that pre-disaster is. On top of that, we set aside, as I said, 15% of all funding we spend here into a mitigation fund to build back stronger and more resilient for specific projects that were not damaged, that were things that, going back to the Guam Waterworks discussion, it sounds like there were some wells that didn't have generators. If it makes sense to put generators on them and harden them and put concrete, protection around them, that's something we would be able to do going forward in the future as long as it's cost beneficial. That's our three major programs that we provide. There's a bunch of other programs that exist at the federal government. USDA is looking at some of the ag stuff already. They're here on island. Let me think of some of the other ones that are there. There may be stuff through, I said SBA, maybe NRCS if there's some small stream issues. There's a bunch of different federal programs. The one thing that I did want to say is that in addition to that, any direct federal assistance, which we're primarily doing right now, we can direct any federal agency to do anything if it's impacting life, safety, or health. So that's why we're installing generators. That's why we're clearing debris. That's why we have medical personnel in the hospitals. We will help. That's why we're helping with the fuel issue down at the racks. We have Department of Energy down there. We're helping at Guam Power Authority. We have people all over the place trying to help to bring the infrastructure back up and operational.
Thank you very much. There are many families who have lost everything, their homes, or maybe their roof, a part of their home. You and I were having a discussion offline about the work that you did after Typhoon U2 and Saipan. Can you share a little bit of what we can look forward to help these displaced families?
Yeah, I just came from Saipan this morning and visited the governor over there and was there for Typhoon U2, which was, I think, had over 200 mile per hour recorded winds, so Category 5 event. It destroyed a lot of people's homes over there, and they don't have the same, they didn't have at that time the same codes that you guys had for concrete structures, and so a lot of wood buildings with tin roofs destroyed. So one of the things we did is we offered a program that in lieu of, if you had a max grant from FEMA, if you didn't take the max grant, we went ahead and authorized permanent housing construction. And we actually built people permanent houses, 170 of the I want to say 400 and something people that were eligible, almost 500 were eligible. Yeah, about a little bit over, yeah, right around 500 were eligible, about 170 we built. I went and saw the last one being built today, 4 years later. It takes a long time to build them, especially, with the limited labor force out here. But really, really neat to see. And the houses we're building they're all concrete. They have a 20-year roof on them. They have hurricane shutters. They're really built for this environment. So that's a possibility. We could bring that program here if it's needed. The other thing we did is we worked with the military, and I already talked to the admiral here about doing this, is if there's homes that had the tin roofs that blew off, can we quickly just put the tin roof back together? And I have I've brought over and I supply tin for this, and we did this following U2, where we put up 547 roofs in 4 months. I think I could do it a lot quicker now because we know a lot more and we've gotten better at it. So I've brought over the tin for 800 roofs and brought over I'm starting to bring the CBs in and the other individuals. And we'll quickly be going through and doing an assessment as people start applying who lost their roof. And rather than put plastic sheeting on, which is typically what we would do, would it be better if we just put a tin roof back and put Typhoon clips, made it a little bit more hardened and better for the future. That's what we've done. It takes a little longer than the tarping, but I think it's a better solution in the midterm for individuals. Yeah. So those are the types of programs we'll look at doing. And, as I said, one of the key things is looking for those that are most socially vulnerable, that need the help, that don't have the resources. And we want to make sure we're there to help, everyone, but especially those individuals.
Yes, thank you very much, Bob. I know in the past, past storms that when we rebuild that with FEMA, that these roofs need to be concrete. So hopefully Guam will be eligible for this rebuilding program, and that the tin roofs that you can build today, tomorrow, in the next couple of weeks will still be just a temporary fix until we can get those permanent homes in. And is there some kind of waiver or application that we need to do from the Guam government side to be eligible for that, or you will make that determination on your own?
Yeah, once we get a better idea of what the damages sustained here were to individuals' homes, we will work with Guam to offer different programs, and then it's really up to the individual to make a decision on their recovery. They're in the driver's seat, and I'll tell you, as I said, there's 500 and some people that were eligible for that program, and only 170 took it. So not everyone, it works for everyone. Some people want the money right now. They want to be in control. They want a contractor. They want to rebuild. Some people say, okay, hey, I'll go find a temporary place to live at. please rebuild my house for me, right? And so it depends on your individual situation and what works best for you. But what we did is community meetings and discussed them with individuals that were eligible for the program. So we'll bring every program we have here and have those discussions, not only with Gov Guam, but with the individuals that are impacted.
Okay, thank you very much, Bob. Thank you for your time, for being here, and I think the information that you shared, the programs that you have, are really giving us a lot of hope. This morning, if you were listening, or you were in the CNMI this morning, but I felt like there was a lot of doom and gloom, and right now, what we need the most is hope. And so I think that that is something that we can look to you to, and the administration, and hopefully the people of Guam can look to our body also for this hope, that we'll be able to pass these bills to give assistance and to allow the government to spend the money that it needs and to collaborate with FEMA to bring the assistance as soon as possible. So, Siduas Masi.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You know, collectively, we are all leaders at different levels of government. And as I said in the beginning, recovery works best when we all work together with a common mission, and it has to be the people of Guam in this case. And how do we help them the most, and how do we help them the quickest? Sometimes things take time, and you are so far away from the mainland. I can't just go down the block and go to the next city, state, or county and grab something. It's difficult here. Labor's difficult to get here. You know, there's just so many complexities here. We will go as quick as we can go, but need to do it right. And we want to make sure it's collective. It involves everyone. So we'll be everyone's partner, and the key is to work for the survivors of this storm and get them back to where they were pre-disaster. And if we can make them have a better situation, we will.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's what we're all looking to do, raise the quality of life for everyone on Guam, not just because of the typhoon, but in general, to bring us back better and stronger than we were before. And I think you have our commitment from the legislature to collaborate, to work together, to bring these partnerships to life and to bring the help to the people. So thank you very much. And you're right, there is a price to pay for living in paradise, but you know, this is a lesson for us now to prepare better with your assistance, to harden our infrastructure, to do better for our people. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Perez, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Fenton, for being here, and all your staff in this really great time of need in our community. You know, I think one of the biggest issues that we're facing is the water, access to clean water, to clean drinking water. And you know, we've had testimony here earlier today. Can you give us perhaps some sort of what is the plan to help expedite providing water to our people? You know, considering, I mean, it seems like there's a lot of supplies here on island, and there seems to be some sort of maybe bureaucracy taking place, or that could be just my own impression, as far as the point of contact of who is going to assure that the generators are up and running, so these water wells are working and pumping out water to the people. So is there anything that you can add to that?
Yeah, I think there's 3 ways that we're helping with that right now, and there's other ways we could help post-event in the future. 3 ways we're helping with right now is we're sending out box water, bottled water right now immediately. And I talked about sending it to the shelters, sending it to the mayor's offices, and we have more box water to send in the interim if needed. So that's the first thing, and that's really not a solution. That's a temporary, something temporary. The next thing we've done is bulk water. We gave GPA the 2 6,500-gallon bulk water, potable water trailers we have on island. We've also tasked DOD to look for every bulk water trailer they have on island that they can make available that they're not using right now, to assist them in providing water to individuals. The last way is by putting out generators to power up wells for GPA. We as I said, received a request. I got here on island Saturday. Friday, tropical storms, first winds. I think I was on one of the first flights to get here in Anderson. We had some people here ahead of time. We have generators staged here. And we started immediately working with Guam to get all the generator requirements in. And we're getting tons of them in right now for, not only Guam Water Authority, but many other entities. And so what we're doing is prioritizing, based on water, power, comms, where those need to go. Medical is right up there. And doing assessments of those locations. From Guam Water Authority, we received 11. One, I think, had been damaged, so we couldn't put a generator in. There's 10 locations that I hear that we're able to assess. The first one went in today. I have a great picture of it going in today. And we will put more in tomorrow and the next day. As we get other requirements for generators, we will go ahead and continue to install generators until the power comes up. The best thing is obviously for power to come up and for fuel to continue to get out there. And the more that fuel gets out there and the more that power comes up, the less need for temporary measures like generators.
Thank you for that response. Okay, in regards to, so you have a program, emergency protective measures. Could Guam have requested that to supply the generators in advance?
Well, we did a declaration pre-landfall. I want to say that, this is, the declaration is typically issued 48 hours prior to landfall, and usually it's for helping with mass care and evacuation. Obviously, evacuation isn't really something that we've ever done on Guam. It's really something for the states, but more of mass care type of assistance is what we've done. We really don't have the time to set up generators pre-hurricane. It takes some time to do the assessment, to move it, to install it. We're working on hardening and everything, get everything ready for the hurricane. Last thing we want to do is lose $1 million generators. To give you an idea, some of our generators take 2 years to get. Even we have Defense Production Authority, which means we could go to the front of any line. Even in doing that, it takes 1 year to 2 years to get with some of these big generators we have. So we have some pretty large generators here and some amazing capability, plus we're bringing more in. So what we want to do is protect everything as the storm comes in and harden everything and make sure they don't get damaged. The next thing we want to do is immediately after the storm, start becoming operational, start pulling everything out, get our warehouse operational, move all the debris we had to remove. We responded just like you responded and had to do the same thing to get our facility going, the roads open, all those kind of things. Next thing we do is fly in the 249th Power Battalion. We had some on island beforehand. I was on the first plane with 25 of them, and then there's more on the next plane that came in that night. They start assessing right away. And at the same time, we're contracting with vendors here because we need the ability to haul and cranes to lift the thing. So all that's being done simultaneously. Most of this, we've gone ahead and pre this event, done work to figure out who we're going to partner with on island, which contractors are available to do this kind of work. But we got to make sure their equipment's operational. So Saturday we got in, we started assessing. By Sunday, we had teams out in the field assessing, and this morning start hauling generators to sites, and the first generator went in this morning. So I think we're moving pretty quickly. I think the pace will pick up. The truth is you get hit by a pretty big typhoon, and it caused a lot of damage, impacted roads, and it's impacting phones still to today. It's making operations very difficult. But I think that we're responding pretty quickly to the requirements as they're coming up, and we know the priorities. We will get those generators to those sites. The good news is I think we matched most of them, so they're in our inventory. We don't have to fly them from off island, so that speeds up the process of being able to install.
Okay, and do you have a disaster unemployment assistance? Does Guam qualify for that?
Yeah, Guam's already qualified through the action by the president to open IA, so it brings disaster unemployment assistance specific to the disaster, and the SNAP program I talked about, and there's a bunch of other programs that were triggered by that declaration by the president,
Yeah,
by the request from the governor.
That's great, because I know there's some people that have lost work because their businesses blew down, and it's good to know that would be provided to them. So just for people that are listening out there, we want to encourage them to apply.
Including things like crisis counseling, assistance from lawyers. I mean, I'm sure people are going to have legal questions, and all those kind of things are there. So there's a lot of programs. And, you know, as I told you, we talked earlier about the ways to apply, but the Disaster Recovery Center will have individuals to help guide people to some of those programs too.
Okay, and in regards to getting the word out, I mean, that's one of the issues. Some of our neighborhoods have spotty service. What are the plans to improve that?
Yeah, so at our disaster recovery centers, we'll bring satellite capability into those so that we could have Wi-Fi. As I said yesterday on the news, we should have those operational in less than a week. I'm hoping by this weekend the first ones are starting to become operational. We have to agree on facilities with the mayors that they'll let us use. We have to make sure that they, that they are big enough for the size of the crowds that we'll see there. But I think we're headed toward that. We'll bring in the satellite systems. We'll do those kind of things. On top of that, in that center, we'll send people out to the field. By this weekend, we should have over 100 people in the field, and they will have iPads, and they'll be able to go to not only work through the villages, but go to areas, whether it be the churches, maybe the grocery store. Where do people congregate at that we could communicate? The other way is arming public officials like yourselves and the mayors. So, I sent information to all the mayors on the program doing that. And so we'll look through many different vehicles to make sure that we help people register. I think one of the biggest things we've done is not just wait for people to figure out how to get to the system, but come to them with capability and technology to assist them.
Okay, the other thing is, there's a lot of vegetation damage, and with that comes the potential for soil erosion and mudslides. So are you working closely with the Army Corps to prevent more preventative measures to protect homes, protect people at this point?
No, I haven't got a mission to start analyzing the potential of mudslides, from this event. And some things we can do, some things are underneath our program that we can't do when it comes to secondary impacts from future events. So we're limited to what we could do when it comes to natural vegetation, but if it's engineered or something like that, then we can go ahead and look at it, especially if it supports infrastructure like a road or a house or those kind of things. So we're glad to look at those and analyze those, and we're glad to bring in the right engineers to have those discussions if there's specific areas. And I appreciate it. I'll take it back to Guam and ask them.
Appreciate that, because one of the issues is documenting, right? So maybe we didn't plan this level of devastation. Perhaps, maybe we can rely on certain images, GIS images, prior to the typhoon. How far out can we use? What kind of data can we use to assess this potential hazard?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would turn it over to one of the geologists to answer your question. And specifically, I know that some areas have pre-existing slides that are known. Some are unknown slides that are caused by an event. Some may be water intrusion. There's many reasons why we see slides happen. So, what I'll do is have USGS and some of our geologists have a look at that and see what is the likelihood or the threat or the risk of that to happen, and then have a discussion with Guam. And if there's mapping that exists, great. If there's not mapping that doesn't exist and we could identify areas, we're glad to do that.
Okay, the other thing of interest to me is there was some talk about establishing FEMA disaster debris sites. Is there an opportunity? is there an opportunity while you're here to identify those sites for the future so that, we're ready?
My understanding is Guam has a debris plan. It identifies the sites in that debris plan. We work with all of our states and territories, and we actually teach a debris course. We've brought it out here before. I think it's been some years since we've done that. But I would ask them a copy of the debris plan, and I think those sites, I've driven around the island, I've seen the sites. I assume those are some of the sites that are identified in that plan, but you'll have to ask them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other thing about hazard mitigation, so GM Berdali was talking about hardening some of the infrastructure so that they don't rely on generators but underlying power supply. To what extent can the hazard mitigation grants be used towards that?
Yeah, there's a cost-benefit ratio that's looked at, and I think the big issue that I've seen in the past about underlining power lines has to do with a engineering assessment of whether it makes sense because you're also an earthquake-prone area too. So usually engineers look at that, make a decision, look at the cost-benefit analysis. For our program, we look at the cost-benefit. How many times has the line gone down? Is it based on the cost to put it underground? Does it make more sense? We did that for CNMI after U2 for the run to the airport and the run to the hospital and to the downtown area. So that's something that we have done before in disasters, but it depends a little bit on the engineering and the cost-benefit analysis.
Okay, and then the other thing is homelessness. So we hear in the paper that we see in the paper there's thousands homeless. I guess how can we expedite either, is it temporary homes or even permanent homes for them? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, so our assistance is focused on individuals that are homeowners or renters who had a home prior to the event and received damage from those events. So if we're talking about individuals that were homeless prior to the event, then we need to really work with HUD and the nonprofit organizations and others on what assistance that we can provide them. If we're talking about this event has caused them to be homeless, then that's definitely something we would be working on.
Okay, thank you.
And I just, on the first part of that, we're obviously not going to say, if they're homeless and they're in a shelter, we're not going to do anything with you. We're going to work very hard with the nonprofits, HUD, and others to figure out how do we meet those gaps. Our programs won't fix everyone's issues. They won't. However, what we will do is we'll work aggressively to look across other federal agencies, Guam programs, and nonprofits to figure out how to meet those gaps.
Okay, thank you. And then as far as assessing other government facilities, so has other agencies been in contact with FEMA, such as DOE, in regards to the effects of the typhoon?
Yeah, I have not seen an assessment. I know that DOE was doing some assessments, but I haven't seen yet what the damages, an estimate of damages for publicly owned buildings or infrastructure yet from Guam. Usually Guam collects that, gives us an estimate, and typically what would happen is we go out and do a joint assessment of that. Because we're so busy on the response end of this, we haven't got to the part of doing a joint assessment yet.
Okay. And as far as timeline, how soon does all this work have to be done?
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Timeline.
Oh, timelines. Which work are we talking about?
Emergency, permanent work. I mean, is permanent work part of it as well as
so,
the assistance?
yeah, okay. So the timelines for typically for me directly to do it for you, where I do provide direct federal assistance, is something that happens in the first 60 days of an event. Because by that time, typically, unless things are really not going well, powers come back, waters come back, there's no more life-saving requirements. Now we're into recovery and rebuilding. The timelines for recovery and rebuilding is essentially there's a application process that starts 60 days after the incident period closes. And in those 60 days, all those that are eligible for the public assistance program apply to that program. and they fill out a request for public assistance as a form they fill out. That includes some nonprofits that are eligible nonprofits that provide an emergency type of service, or critical type of service, and there's a list of them, and we can help you with that. They apply to the program, and then what we do is we joint with Guam, do an initial meeting to kind of explain the program to them and to help them start. And then what will happen is we'll send individuals to that public entity to help them write the grants.
So what is the ballpark? Do you have an estimate of what this is all going to cost?
Oh, no, I don't have an estimate yet. I can only give you, I think the best thing I could come up with right now is what we spent in Pangsanwa, and use that as, you know, an event that's near as bad as this, right? You know, maybe a little bit worse. But we spent, you know, in the neighborhood of $200 to $300 million in Pangsanwa, and then that's 2003. You go 20 years later, you kind of get an idea of what this may cost. You know, things are different. You know, the power poles are up now. They weren't up then. So there's different costs, but I don't have an estimate. I could tell you, I could come back and provide what I've spent to date, and I'm probably spending, to date, I'm probably over $25, $30 million already.
Okay, well, thank you for all your service and commitment to the island and to helping out people in need. But I do have a question for Mr. Esteves. You are with the...
Senator Paris?
Oh, just the FEMA?
We're going to wrap with FEMA because we need to move on to the bill.
Okay.
Do you have anything else for Bob? If none, we're going to move on.
I'm sorry,
I'll
Mr.
ask
Chair. Objection, when we started this round, you said that we were going to be limited to one question each, and then you proceeded to allow a 45-minute TED Talk on FEMA 101. And so I just would ask that we be consistent in enforcing the rules of engagement. We've, you know, yes, Mr. Fenn's got a lot of stuff to do, but also we have to do our due diligence representing the people in this crucial time. And so I would just ask for consistency rather than eliminating the opportunity for the remaining members to ask questions of Mr. Fenton, sir, with all due respect. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'm not going to deny anybody. It's not asking anybody else in the panel but him. Only FEMA. All right? Speaker? Madam Speaker, do you have any questions so we can wrap this up? I'm
Yes,
hoping we'll be
thank you.
done sooner.
Thank you for being here and for being willing to answer all our questions. And I hope we can help you in your mission to get the word out and to get aid to the people of Guam, Sidus Masi. So when you talked about the RAC, does that mean the response? What does the RAC stand for?
Sorry, say it again?
You talk about communicating with the RAC. Response Activity Coordinator or something?
Oh,
Response Activity Coordinator, is that what it's called?
I don't know if I said the word RAC. Did I say the word RAC?
What did you say, RACs? You said when you were working at the port to resolve the fuel, you discussed...
Yeah. So what I said was, I was giving you examples of different federal agencies and what they were doing. And I said one of the federal agencies, Department of Energy, was working at the port on the rack and the fuel companies, between the fuel companies. The rack is the thing that provides fuel to trucks. That's how they fill up the trucks.
All right.
So there was a power issue with that early on in this event. And they were working to whether they needed a generator down there to help or go on island power. They went on island power pretty quick. But since then, our Department of Energy person has been working with those fuel companies to try to increase the number of gas stations they have on island and make repairs to those gas stations and to ascertain what are the issues. So one of the things Department of Energy has the ability to do is to understand, be able to get information that is proprietary information to help us make better decisions. And so they've been working with all the different fuel companies to get that information to help us understand what do they need at those gas stations. You know, a lot of it is personnel, some of it is increased fuel trucks to make more deliveries. How do we get them going up? So the rack was just one piece of equipment that I was talking about.
So did you help power up that issue down there?
No, they went on full power.
All right. Who is it that you work with in the government of Guam then? Is there one person who you work with to coordinate your efforts?
Yeah, So in any disaster, the governor appoints a number of people to fill certain positions, and one of them is the territory coordinating officer. And so the territory coordinating officer Charles has been the person down at the EOC with Sam, who's been the kind of lead for most of the coordination at the EOC to coordinate all the multiple Guam agencies, and we have the federal agencies down there working with them.
So who is it for Guam?
Sam Brennan.
Okay.
Sam Brennan.
All
I
right.
want to make sure I'm saying it right. Sam Brennan, and then Charles, and then there's a fiduciary responsibility, who's the it's called what is it called there? The GAR, the governor's authorized representative. Well, it wouldn't be governor. What do you call it? Territory authorized representative. Territory. So the governor's authorized representative, who's her chief of staff, and that's who's responsible for the fiduciary response.
What does that mean?
The funding, the authorizing funding.
Right, that's exactly. Would that be the same as authorizing purchase orders?
Well,
Authorizing
for me,
FEMA funding? No,
Yeah,
what do you
so,
mean by
no,
that?
What he's authorizing is requests to me for me to provide direct for federal assistance. So, for example, if I'm going to...
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, if we could get some order. Please, sorry.
We talked about the example of a generator. So what happens is there's missions that come into me for Guam to ask for help in certain missions. Can you install generators for critical facilities? That may be a mission assignment that they give me, a request for assistance. They give me a request. That request is signed off by the GAR because there's a dollar estimate that goes with it. So here's the estimate of funding that we see.
Excuse me, Chair, I have a point of procedure. How many questions are we allowed?
Senator Fisher, you can ask as many questions as you can within your allotted time. We don't count the time for response. Your mic's not on, sir.
We understand that, but we also understand what Senator San Augustine told us, which was one question.
No, one round. One round.
One round, one question.
No, everyone's had multiple questions.
Well, not those of us who passed out of courtesy.
My understanding is that we could have asked as many questions as we wanted within our 5 minutes. This is a round for FEMA.
You're mistaken, ma'am.
You can ask Senator Joe for clarification, but he allowed me to ask the same amount of questions. Senator Perez. My understanding is that we could ask as many questions as we want within the allotted time. So if you skipped because if you want your 5 minutes, then we can do that.
Madam Chair, I
Speaker
appreciate
Terlaje.
all the information from FEMA and the questions the speaker and everything. We all have those questions, but I thought we were here for an emergency session to respond, and we have not even at this hour. Many of us have family at home that have no power or resources to even have dinner, and we're not even in a position to help them because we're here entertaining all of this without even addressing the bill. We've been here all day. I've never been in an emergency response where we're not addressing a bill here.
This is out of order, Madam Chair.
It might
We
be
are
out of
addressing
order,
the
but
bill.
if you take a vote,
The
I think you're
bill-
going to have a very different response from the rest of us
Objection,
that
I
are
don't think we're here to act
Point of
brashly
order.
or
We're
in a rush.
here.
Okay.
Maybe some colleagues, if we had stayed and worked instead of recessing, could go home earlier. The problem is we're here to take care of the needs of all of the people of Guam, not just our immediate families.
We're all here to take care of the needs
We're
of the
here.
speaker.
Thank you.
We did not
Order.
set up a
Order.
session where we're
I
not
object to
addressing
the
a bill.
insinuation.
Order, please.
The bill.
Speaker Terlaje,
Thank
you have the floor.
Thank you. The bill is to authorize $50 million of expenditures for the governor, and I wanted to ask FEMA, and for me, this is the most relevant question of this entire proceedings today, is what is your estimate of the need for Guam for emergency expenditures?
Yeah, I don't have an estimate yet. I haven't had time to put together an estimate. I said earlier that our funding works on reimbursement. So you need to be able to spend money in order for us to reimburse it. The only other estimate I'd give you is what we spent here in Pangsama, which I've already given, the funding for Pangsama. You use the 20-year, difference to kind of get an idea. That one, as an order of magnitude, might have been an order of magnitude a little bit worse. Maybe, I don't know. We have not yet got to the point where I've done an assessment of all the destroyed, major or minor damaged homes, or got an accounting of all the infrastructure damage yet. So it's hard for me to give an estimate. You may want to ask Guam for that.
All right. Who?
Guam. The government of Guam.
Guam. Okay, sorry. I thought you said. So what is the, what about the 15 million? Do you think it will exceed that?
Yeah, it would be $400 million. So I think it's a place to start, right? You need to get money into the system so they could go ahead and make decisions, issue contracts, do purchase orders, or what's going to happen is it's going to be solely dependent on the federal government only to take action. And that doesn't work because we don't have the knowledge with the infrastructure or the experience or control the resources here. So you're going to have to pay overtime for people to respond, police, fire, all those kind of things are costs that you're going to incur right now that you have to go ahead and pay. We could eventually reimburse those costs,
yes,
but we can't pay for them up front, not
right.
knowing what they're at.
No, we're just trying to finesse the amount. If it's reasonable, I want to, of course, assure the people of Guam this is a reasonable amount. Do you remember the amount reimbursed or spent in the CNMI?
I want to say CMI was close to U2, I want to say it was close to $600 or $800 million. That's pretty high. I only want to say it may be even higher than that. It's pretty high. U2 was.
Do you think our expenses here will be more or less?
We have a bigger population. I just don't know,
okay.
right? In some cases, the power system, much better than U2 or Pangsama. You look around here, the poles are standing, but there's other damages you see too that are there. So you're asking me to make a guess. I think, you got to start somewhere. You got to be able to take care of all the overtime costs.
Yeah.
You got to take care of all the emergency contracts happening. I could reimburse those pretty quickly, but you need to get funding out there to make those decisions.
So that's hopefully what this bill is going to do.
Yeah.
Is does the government of Guam is supposed to be acting then pretty much ahead of you, right? And you come in and reimburse. So there's no need for the government of Guam to wait for approval from you for their actions, for example, to get water to the shelters or to put generators at the wells?
Yeah, so the way it works is Guam can take any action it wants, and I could, that has to do with, they can take any action they want. There's things that I could reimburse for actions they're taking, like water to the shelters. There's certain capability that I bring that's inherently within the federal government, C-17s, the military, ships, all those kind of things. So when there's an event that's this big for any state or territory, they turn to the federal government and say, hey, can you help us with this event? And so the fact that I have a warehouse here stored with 100 generators, I as the federal government can maintain and keep that here for the threat for Guam or CNMI, where maybe it's not within your budget to keep something that big here because you don't have that many events, right? I'm constantly using that not only out here, but sometimes I use it back in Hawaii. So I have the ability to do those kind of things that maybe you don't. I then provide those resources as Guam asks for them to help them in these events.
All right. The 100 generators, are those pretty much, you said, spoken for now, or they've been requested already? That many requests you've received?
Yeah, I haven't been in our office all day long, but my guess is that the Corps of Engineers has a long list of assessments they're doing, And what they do is pair those
Yeah.
to the right size. And so they're pairing what we have plus what we're flying in, because we're flying in more.
Yes.
But we have a wide assortment of generators.
I appreciate that. And do you expect any of those to assist us in getting the telecommunications improved?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we could definitely use them to install, you know, at the, look for some of the repeaters that are maybe big ones that cover a wide area and generate those, right? So those are some opportunities, and we've talked to Guam in the last day about, hey, should we get them out there to those locations and do that, also working with the phone company and the different systems to be able to do that. We've also brought some satellite capability here, some cell cows to extend bandwidth in certain areas. So we'll do that around the recovery centers and those kind of things, set up kind of internet cafes.
So do you work with it's always through the government of Guam instead of with the telecom company, for example? It would be with the government.
Instead of what?
With the telecommunication company, it doesn't, you don't work directly with them, you work with the government of Guam?
The government of Guam has to give me the direction of who to go work with.
What the priorities are.
That's right.
Okay, because,
so
yeah.
The governor's given me her priorities, and based on that, we're working to meet those priorities. The government of Guam, through their operations center in coordination with the villages and all the different Guam agencies, puts requests in for assistance to me on a form. Those requests come to me, then I action them to the right federal agency or move the right resource in there.
All right, I'm asking because I heard the telecoms company say power is a big issue. And whenever power is the issue, fuel's an issue. Yes, so I just wanted to know if that all goes through the government then, if they're going to get your assistance.
Yeah,
I think they're counting on your assistance, it sounds like. But all right, my other questions are, when you listed out the requirements that the government has to match, you said there were contractual requirements. Are there procurement requirements? Like, must it be competitive procurement, or?
Yeah, so.
And the
yes.
government's familiar with those? I think Charles Esteves is familiar with those procurement requirements in order that they will be reimbursable?
Yes, you're correct. There, CFR 200 Part 2 spells out the procurement requirements for federal grants, and they have to follow those procurement requirements. That's one of the one-page documents I sent out to the mayors earlier and to the different Guam agencies. So it's important they follow procurement requirements because there will be audits later on.
Okay, and then, so you mentioned how FEMA is the one now directing the other federal agencies, including, you said, military removal of debris?
Yeah, so FEMA's job in a disaster is the president appoints FEMA to be the lead of all federal agencies that coordinate their efforts and gives us a fund to provide funding to those federal agencies to take action. There's many agencies that have gotten many missions, including Department of Defense, that's helping with route clearing and clearing the debris to the rights of way.
Is that on the basis or out of the basis?
Not only on the basis, but outside the basis. So there's specific routes they've cleared. They also went outside the base for critical routes to go to the base and cleared it. And we're working with Guam to clear other areas in the north that have heavy debris.
All right, and so when there was a discussion earlier about the military's waiting for a request from us, it's really going to be request through you?
Yeah, so the military gets requests from me. We've given the military requests where we have requirements for them that they're the best tool for that capability. When they're not the best tool, that request may go to someone else. In some cases, we may contract for that tool. It depends really who's the best capable person. The military right now is doing strat airlift and sea lift for us. The military is doing the debris removal mission. We will definitely bring them in. We talked about potentially going to tin roofs and doing that. We will bring them in for that. We're using them, we're assessing them to do water removals to add to that. And we're asking them to also provide fuel to some of our generators so we don't impact the commercial market out there. There's many other things that they're doing, from communications to other things that are helping us operational, plus giving us space. We're using their facilities right now to stage a lot of our equipment and move a lot of stuff around. So they've been pretty critical to this operation.
All right, and the 10 generators that you've committed to GWA, how long do you think before all 10 are installed?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to ask the Corps of Engineers the question. I haven't spoken to them. I just saw the picture that I just got emailed that the first one was installed today. I don't know if they're difficult locations, easy locations, big sizes, small sizes. So, yeah, I don't know. But the fact that I understand all 10 have been assessed, and I have not heard that we don't have any of those not in stock, I would suspect that they get installed fairly soon.
Thank you, appreciate that very much. So I'm glad to learn, so we have a non-cash assistance, a direct, and thanks to your warehousing of some of these items that they're immediately available now. With your authorization, we've got personnel on the ground authorized, and then we've got the future reimbursement potential. So thank you very much to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Barnett, do you have a question?
Mr. Chair?
How many questions we get?
Oh,
On a point of information, please.
Yes.
We just received a call from one of the council generals, and it was to inquire with FEMA, does the residents of FAS who are staying here, do they qualify for FEMA?
The COFA.
COFA?
Yeah. I talked about that a little earlier.
Yeah, that was spoken up earlier, COFA.
Just a verification on that.
So basically, underneath the compact as it exists right now today, COFA, people that are underneath COFA that are not eligible for individual assistance. However, if they have a child born here in the United States, they could apply through their child born here in the United States. Okay?
All right, thank you. Senator Burnett, you asked a question. How many questions?
I'm sorry, one question. That doesn't mean we're not going to work with nonprofits and other programs. We will help them somehow. Okay.
You do what you need to do. Senator Burnett, in reference to, is it one question?
I'm not sure, Mr. Chair. It depends on, I didn't hear you ask anyone else how many questions they had.
No,
but for Mr. Fenton, I just want to thank you for your time here. I know you got a lot of things going on, but I wanted to ask financial institutions, are you able to, what kind of, if any, assistance can you provide relative to standing them up so that people can access their money? Because one of the main issues we're hearing about is people, no ATMs are working, banks, digital. We had Lester Carlson, the man sitting right next to you, say that we are in the middle of a digital catastrophe. So what assistance, if any, can FEMA provide so that our people can get to their money before they get assistance?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I agree with you. I was trying to get cash out the other day and was having trouble finding a place to get cash. So, definitely if depending on what the financial institutions needed, we may be able to assist them. If Guam asks us to help them, I think we'd be limited in what we could do. We could probably, provide them a generator, obviously, if that's a problem, but it's probably more telecommunications. And I think we'd be limited on the telecommunications side to help them out. But I'll definitely bring in some other federal agencies that work with banks to start looking at those issues and see what it is we can do. I think the power issue is pretty easy for us. I think the telecommunications part may be a little bit more difficult just because of the limited satellite capability and those kind of things that we have on island.
Right, and I mean, I know one of our colleagues had previously spoken about a sense of hope, and I think that a lot of people have looked right past the local government and are looking at you and FEMA as, pardon the pun, but the great white hope, because we have not done enough for our people up until this point. In fact, it almost seemed like we were just going to sit around and sit on our thumbs outside of the mayor's and wait for FEMA to come and save the day. We didn't even give our people drinking water until you showed up.
One of the things that we've done in disasters is actually partner with the banking companies to bring in mobile ATMs. And so So, that may be an area for us to partner with them and see what we could bring in, and then power, and some of them come with their own satellite capability and those kind of things.
Do you guys provide any connectivity capability? Because I know you had said that when you send your workers out to the households, they have a Palm device with internet access that...
Yeah, we have limited, we're going to put stuff up near our DRCs. We have stuff for our teams to communicate with. We have some cell cows that we have here to kind of build a internet cafe around the areas to register. We'll use it mostly for the registration capability, but we could, definitely maybe one of the things to do is bring one of those things and put it near the DRCs, right? One of the cash machines, and create that ability for people to pull cash while they're at the recovery center. So I think you have some good ideas there. I'll take them back and see how we can assist.
I did want to ask about reimbursements, right? Because I thank you for your time, and I know that, my mom's sitting at home in the dark, but this is the life I chose, to represent and serve the people. But, we're here to do a job. We're not here to rush through this bill. Some of my colleagues, it depends on the day of the week. Sometimes they want to discuss and debate. Other times they want to rush through. But I don't think this is something that we need to rush through, because we don't even have an idea of how much money it's going to take. You can't guesstimate. It also sounds like you're not clear on whether or not we can utilize federal funds for this recovery. Is that accurate to say?
No, everything the president's provided so far is eligible to use. So our ability to reimburse costs for public infrastructure, our ability to provide assistance to individuals, our ability to provide direct federal assistance has been authorized. I think the things that are still to be determined is whether the cost share changes over time. As I said earlier, it depends if you meet the per capita number, or it's really a presidential
There's
decision.
been a question about CARES Act reimbursements, and so ARP funds, for example, can the governor utilize ARP funds and then expect to be reimbursed by FEMA?
So typically, what I said is typically Stafford Act funding is supplemental, and that means it's after insurance takes place or after other federal funding's used. What I can't do, and typically what happens is, I've seen it where we've provided the Stafford Act and they use other federal funding for the non-federal match, the 25%. But the one thing I have not seen yet is where you use some of that other money and you go ahead and make a procurement, and then you ask me for reimbursement of 100%, the reimbursement of that procurement, the 75-25 of that procurement. I haven't seen that. Now, I know that in some of the CARES money, they had certain things they authorized that were unique. I have my lawyer searching those right now for the ARP, for the infrastructure money, and those kind of things. I personally think that I can't reimburse those, but I'm going to verify that.
Thank you,
And I do think they can be used in some cases for the non-federal match.
Right, and so that's the dilemma we're in, is if the governor can use the ARP funds, then we might as well tear up this bill and go home. But I wanted to ask about reimbursements, because there was a comment that was made by Mr. Carlson earlier about legacy issues that the government of Guam has with FEMA. Currently, do we have any outstanding claims with the government of Guam? Do we currently have any outstanding claims with FEMA that have yet to be resolved? And if so, when are those from? And what are the issues? Thank you.
Yeah, we have tons of grants with the government of Guam, both disaster and non-disaster grants. We do, I'm not sure of any outstanding, anything outstanding that's an issue. I do know that we are doing an audit in Guam and CNMI. I haven't seen that audit yet, but I do know that there's been some issues, over the years in past administrations with management of and following the regulations for management of some of our grant funds.
Are you able to say which administration, or
I don't have that information yet.
No?
I don't know how far they went back.
Okay.
And typically, I kind of stay out of it until they've completed it, and then they come to me. We actually contracted this one out, and it started, I want to say, a couple months ago. And
what can you say? What year is in question? Not the range, okay.
Yeah, I'd be guessing. I know there was multiple
And
administrations.
so what were the issues that led for the calling of the audit? Because, you know, we want to make sure that we move forward and we don't make the same mistakes.
Yeah, I would say this, that I have not heard anything that's fraudulent, right? More things that you're not following, grant management practices, whether that be how you account for things, what you spend the money on, how you get approval, what the documentation is. Those are the kind of things I've heard. But I haven't heard anything fraudulent, and I don't think, well, at least what I feel pretty comfortable about that, because if it was fraudulent, we'd probably be talking to the Inspector General or something like that.
Right.
And we're not, this is an internal audit that our region's doing, that we've contracted out just because we're probably the busiest region in the country right now.
Right. So it kind of sounds like maybe we didn't cross our I's and dot our T's.
More of that administrative, I would say, type of audit responsibilities that you have, that kind of stuff.
Right. Well, I just wanted to say we're thankful, grateful, sure, but I know that FEMA and the recovery assistance that you provide is part and parcel of our relationship with the United States. I also have to say I'm just, maybe I'm too optimistic, but I'm disappointed that is that one generator that you guys have put out, is that up and running or is that still being installed?
No, the one generator is up and operational today. So, I mean, tropical force winds ended Friday.
Yeah.
Didn't move anything out till Saturday. Saturday we open up and start moving debris from our facility like everyone else.
Correct.
Saturday is the first plane that comes in with Corps of Engineers and everyone else. That's Saturday evening. So Sunday we get to work. We get the priorities from Guam. We go out Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday we're installing. I mean,
And I appreciate that. I'm just saying that we're sitting here and we're all saying, oh, Saturday this, Sunday that, Monday that, Tuesday that. But to the people who are suffering without power, without electricity, we may be talking about 5 to 6 days. But for these people who are living in these conditions right now, it's a lifetime. It's forever.
Oh, I believe me, there's no one that's not going, we have people working 16-hour days, right? The issue is, I think we all have to be a little bit realistic of what it takes to put a generator in and not kill someone in doing it. So there's certain steps that you have to take. And, this is what I said earlier. I think social media and a lot of other things think that things should happen like that.
Sure.
In reality, when you talk about moving something that weighs a couple tons, you need cranes, you need certain protection equipment, you need to go ahead and I don't know if those wells are ready to accept the generator or we're doing all the wiring in there. There's all these pieces that go to it. So without knowing that, look, I want to move faster, just like you do. I know there's people out there hurting. There ain't anyone on the federal team that doesn't want to move faster, break glass, go as quick as we can. We're doing that. I mean, we got stuff in flight all night long, all day long, planes moving, stuff moving, people moving. With that, it unfortunately takes time to do this. Sure. And I'll say this, the best thing that we could do is, as we rebuild, look for opportunities to not let this happen again, both individually and, as a government of Guam, as a federal government, and I put me in that. How do we work together all the way down to the individual? Are individuals prepared? Do they have water, food, and all that ready to go in their kit? Do they have their own generators if they need? I mean, you're in an island community that's a difficult community. It's kind of like Florida or some of those areas that see hurricanes all the time.
And I know, and that's I think what's going on here is there's a part of this body and this population who thinks that this is the first storm we ever went through, who thinks that we just suddenly became an island. But these challenges that you're talking about, this is our life.
Paka, Paksangwa, I've been here for all your storms. Yeah. I've spent over a year of my life on Guam. I've been here for a lot of storms over the years. Maybe one hasn't happened this big for 20 years, but I'll tell you what, I bet you the next one's less than 20 years away. As the ocean heats up, as climate change takes effect, we're seeing And this year, they told me, hey, it looks like the heat and the warm and the El Nino, La Nina, be prepared this year for a big Western Pacific, tropical storm season.
yeah.
And it happened earlier than we thought.
True. And I think that's why the
Look at
spotlight is
just
on.
Pangsanwa, Paca, December. So this is just the beginning. You guys are at the beginning of typhoon season. It's not over.
And again, I think that's why we have to turn the spotlight on every little move that we're making and every little thing that we haven't done for our people, so that you're right, this is a new age. Everyone thought this thing was going to go north. They thought it was going to go south, but it hit us right smack on. And so anything we could do to rebuild back stronger and better, we definitely appreciate. And also anything we can do as a local government to do more for our people without having to wait for FEMA to come to town. Because, if you pay attention, you read the national media, people have been critical of your response in other emergencies too, so.
Yeah, everyone, has to be held accountable at the end of the day for what they do and what they don't do. I would say this, just 26 years in FEMA, not more of a dedicated group of civil servants that want to help people. Does everything go right every day? It doesn't go right for all of us every day. And are there things we could do better some days? Yeah, you bet. And are there bureaucracies that exist in government? But we try to, in these situations, streamline those and break glass and remove those. That's why I'm here. That's why our headquarters sent the head of all disaster operations here, is to break glass, streamline those things, and not let bureaucracy get in the way of helping people in Guam get back.
Thank you. And you talked a big game here today, Mr. Fenton, and there's a lot of expectation from all the various services that you're offering and that are going to be proffered to the people of Guam. So I have no further questions. And again, I thank you so much for your time. I know it's valuable, and thank you for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Burnett. Senator Parkinson, hopefully you'll be quick because we need to reset the system. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to do a follow-up question about the FAS citizens. You said that they could apply through their children if they needed the support. I'm just thinking about for the citizens that don't have children, is there anything we could do as a local body to help fill those gaps?
Yeah, well, that's what we need to do. We need to work together with not only locally, but with nonprofits, and look at what other resources are out there to help them, because they're going to have needs, to your point. So yes, we got to do all those kind of things.
Okay, and then I also had a question about individual claims. I know we have a community of bona fide farmers here. Would lost crops and damaged equipment, would that be something reimbursable by FEMA?
Not by FEMA, but USDA is here on island, and they're already doing crop assessments.
Okay, yeah. And I guess my other question is, this morning we heard John Beneventi, the general manager of GPA, say that for some of the weather vanes on houses, he would recommend that people get an electrician to assess it so that if there needs to be any repairs, they could get repaired, so that when power's ready, they could, get their power right away. I'm just wondering, is the electrician and the cost associated with that electrician, is that something reimbursable by FEMA?
Yeah, I think they were talking about replacing the weatherhead, and that if you had a certified electrician do it, they would accept that and then connect the power to it. I'm sure that I'd have to double check, but I think those will be all costs, because you're talking about essential, needs to the individual. Those will be all costs that would be covered. Keep your receipt, take a picture of the weatherhead that was damaged, and those are things that you should show the claims adjuster that comes from FEMA.
All right, and just one last question. Is Guam going to be okay?
Is Guam going to be okay?
Yeah.
Heck yeah. I've been coming here for 20 years, and you guys have a really resilient population, a great group here. I appreciate the hospitality. I look forward to being at a village barbecue soon, and want to be back here, talking about resiliency and doing something that's non-disaster. But the truth is, we're here, and you guys are in a difficult situation right now, and we're going to stay here until it gets better, and it may take a little while, but we're going to go step by step with you.
I agree, Bob. I think Guam is going to be okay, and with your help and all of us working together, I think we might come out of this stronger than we went into it. So thank you so much for your service, and I appreciate you guys. Not going to hold up any more of your time. I want to get you guys back to work and working 16-hour days. So thank you.
Thank you. Senator Frank? Nothing. We will... I'm going to let FEMA go. We're going to recess to reset the system, and then when we come back, we will begin on the bill on discussion with BBMR. And let's get to the meat of this and move on the bill. Thank you. It's just a reset, okay? We have to recess to reset. Thank you. Recess at this time.